stream. Um, oh, I found the link. Yeah, that's what the Vatican said. He did, but with a bomb or a bomb of force fields. Well, the computer did say out loud, "I don't know what that is," when he came in, remember? And then I was like, "Oh, that's not a bomb. That's going to be something else." Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to go into the intro.
Tea Earl Grey, hot.
I can hear that. Oh, shoot. Okay.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Here's the teacup in my hand. Welcome to the Picard
Oh,
maneuver.
shoot. Yeah.
My name's Tim.
Let me get my teacup. I got a teacup in my hand. Welcome to the Picard maneuver.
Welcome to the Picard maneuver.
Did you say I'm Tim?
I'm Sim already.
You did say I'm Tim, didn't you?
Yep, and I never know how to point.
I'm Joel already.
And we are here talking about Star Trek Picard, episode 8 of season 3, with the title Surrender.
Are you ready for it? Are you all ready
I'm
for
not
that?
ready for it. I'm not ready for it to be episode 8
Oh,
of 10 episodes.
actually, no. How did that happen? How did we get here? Nothing happened the last 2 episodes. Nothing. Not nothing, but like we stalled.
Yeah, okay, so
It was
we
not
were
good.
much more critical. We felt the last episode, in episode 7, was the worst of the season. What did you think of episode 8?
Episode 8 was better, my friend. Episode 8 was better. A lot better. I liked it. It had a lot of problems, but I would give it a force field generating orbs out of 8. No, out of 7.
That's a good new rating system where everything's 4, but you change the base number to change the value. So you can say 4 out of 4 would be like
Right.
100%, but then 4 out of 8 would be 50%. And it would just be way more
Right.
complicated. Anyway, but I agree. This was a much funner episode. It ended up with the exact same cliffhanger as the previous episode did. That was a little annoying. They're really bleeding out these setups and reveals. Um, but overall, I thought it was a fun episode. It had a lot of great moments. I'm enjoying the crew. The crew's finally together. A big problem I'm thinking about this episode is it's episode 8 of 10. They're still on the ship. They're still on the ship. They haven't left the ship. We've finally gotten the crew together for the first time in episode 8 of 10. Only just now do we have the crew together, working together like we wanted. And it's great, but it's on episode 8. And we haven't even introduced the villain yet on episode 8.
Well, yeah, we haven't revealed who the disembodied head villain is. The main baddie that's
The
been
main villain, the
telling
main
Vatican.
mysteries, the main conflict.
Oh, spoilers ahead, by the way.
Well, yes, will be spoilers of the episode, and then we're going to have our commentary on what will happen next, which will surely be spoiling.
We have our And there's a lot of stuff going around right now, like different opinions, different thoughts. I thought everyone would be on the same page at this point. I'm surprised to see that a lot of review pages don't that we have, and I'm like, how
That is the Borg.
could you not?
I think there's a
Um,
lot of resistance to the Borg. People do not think resistance is futile. People do not want the Borg again. They are.
I am
Hopefully
still
you'll be.
smaller, but that's
You're
one
smaller again.
thing.
Hopefully you'll be fixed up again.
Sure, I'll size up here soon.
Oh, and we got Steve and Mac. Steve
Where
and
were
Mac
we,
are
Tim?
following along. What's up, guys? What's up?
What's up,
Mac has a
guys?
great point. Did you know about notice the tonal change after they retook the ship? It suddenly turned into an episode of TNG. Yeah, absolutely. It even seemed a little brighter, and the music was definitely brighter.
Do you think we needed that tone change after like
Dark
how
it's been.
dark and villainous Vadic is for so long? I feel like people were craving that tone change. I think everyone got eviled out. My meter for dealing with like an evil character was even last episode. I
Yeah,
hopefully
Vatic didn't
people
end
can
up
still
going
hear me.
anywhere. Um, well, why don't we go in scene by scene like we normally do? I don't know if there's much more you want to
There,
say
I've
about the
resized.
entire
That's good.
episode. Yeah, you seem to be back in business. I think usually there's it screws up around now, and then we sort of don't know what to say, and then we settle in, and then we keep going. But yeah, I'm just in general really surprised they're still entirely on the ship. Like it was so awkward plot wise that they had to get Vatic to have her final confrontation on the sets on the Titan sets that the only sets they have. So they had to get Vatic there. That's what all of the last episode was about, was getting Vatic onto the set that they had.
Right. And then trying to have a climax for Vadic's story arc, which again, like two I'm not going to say this past episode was a completely filler episode, but I still will. I think by the time episode 10 has aired, um, I can't see that I'm going to change my opinion that this whole season could have been like a 6 episode season.
Oh,
Now, I don't want that. Like, I'd rather have more episodes. I'd rather have the writing better and have it play out better and not have like stalling. I just feel like the writers have been stalling the last 2 episodes. Like, other than the stuff that happened with Dave. Anyway, well, we'll get into that.
yeah, we'll
I
get
won't go
definitely
too
into the
far.
episode. I have one more thought actually. I have a theory. I know it's impossible, but what if at episode 10 there's suddenly a big reveal and they say there's 4 more episodes? It's really a 14 episode season. I know that's like basically impossible because they do syndication on cable already and they've already said it's 10 episodes and several people have said that. But I didn't Stranger Things last season had a surprise drop of 2 episodes, right? Like in
I don't
streaming
know.
world it's possible. I wish that were the case.
Yeah. I don't remember that. I know Stranger Things had like 2 separate releases of like part one of season.
Yeah, they
What,
split the
4 or
last
5?
season into 2 releases, but then they sort of had a surprise 2 episodes in between that wasn't even announced. And
Ah,
anyway, they did something like that where we didn't expect to
well,
see
and it's
episode
kind of,
drop.
and I think like at this point, it's almost it'd be weird because then you'd literally say like those what is it episodes 7 and 8 were like 100% could have been condensed, and then they didn't need extra episodes. They just needed to
Hmm.
be a little more
And frankly, introduce the crew faster. That's the main thing.
get them together faster. Get Vatic like Vadic's been chasing them since episode 1, and then episode 7 and 8 was like on the ship finally. She's really bad at her job, to
She's
be honest.
the only successful thing she has done was when Lord Data did it for her. Everything else she's done was
Yeah,
completely incompetence, tripping over herself.
yeah.
Her goons are. I'm not even sure what her goons are. They're changelings, but they don't change. Ling.
They ling, but they don't change.
Yeah, they're Ling, but not a lot of changing.
A lot
Um,
of ling, not a lot of change.
and yeah, she just kind of went nowhere. She had interesting delivery choices, but she ended up just being a cartoon villain, and in this episode, more of a Bond villain. But,
Yeah,
but
I
yeah, and
agreed. And
but that's,
I thought too that like after because I try to watch a lot of the different review channels just to see what other people are thinking, and um, there are some people that really liked Vatic and thought that it was a super awesome performance by Plummer. I mean, she definitely went for it. I'll give her that. And I don't think she's a bad actor. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, there were some people that were like, "Oh, Vadic was so awesome and so delightfully evil," and so yeah, there are people out there that really enjoyed it. I
Well,
personally
I
did.
wanted to enjoy her,
Yeah.
but just the character's
Well,
backstory didn't work, and she went nowhere.
right. It was a mixture of that, and then like I've talked to a lot of people about villains, like what makes a good villain, and in Star Trek villains, you didn't often have like an evil person. You often had a misunderstood.
Hmm.
Um, it was often more about someone or an alien race or an alien being misunderstood, not even necessarily knowing that they're causing harm. Sometimes it was
Hmm.
political, and like
Or
even
they're like on another scale where they don't understand, bags of water are injured or being injured
yeah,
by their rays or whatever.
right. And then sometimes it was more about education because then, and we can get into that too, the philosophy of Star Trek and how I think that's changed and I think that's hurt even this new season, which I think is better. And I will go back and say again what I've said before, which is that if this was season one, I would be really excited for the rest
Hmm.
of the seasons. This is unfortunately season three. It's the last one we're going to get. And
We definitely have
so
some data philosophy later in this episode. But the episode starts off with Vadic, and she's in the captain's chair. She's being menacing, and
and is she going to stay true to her statement from last episode?
oh yeah, she's
Time to
talking
find
to
out who you
time
are,
to find out
Jack?
who you are, Jack. No, she doesn't stay true to it.
No.
Suddenly there's a whole crew, which I guess we kind of knew. I've been super confused about who's still on the ship, but there's tons of people on the ship now to die, so they're dying. All those people died. They all got killed.
Yeah, a lot of people died. This is like a high body count as far as Star Trek's concerned. A lot of just slaughtering going on from the changelings on the bridge or on the ship, just going around
Yeah,
shooting and
not so
slaughtering.
much on the bridge. Only she only kills one person on the bridge,
Yeah, yeah.
but just on the ship, it's just shooting people left and right. Which
And
weren't they ready
and
for this? Like, wasn't this part of the plan that that when they intentionally let all the changeling goons on, that they would be going around the hallways and maybe shoot people?
yeah, no, they weren't ready for this. Well, no, they have like all these codes that they can use to like stop this from happening, but they only find out about it like when it's necessary to use them to like shut certain things down.
Yeah.
But
Well,
like,
yeah, we talked about the size of it. In Star Trek, it's super easy to take over a Starfleet ship. That's always been the sad truth, and
yeah,
it's just arbitrary codes that stop it.
which whatever, I don't really care about that. I think though, like
Hmm.
again, going back to what's happening while the crew's being slaughtered is like you have Vadic basically dancing to the noises of the crew, like
Oh yeah.
screaming. And I thought, like, again, it's those moments that I think if I was going to play a villain, and obviously I'm not a good actor, and so can't speak to this really, but like, you want to try to play a villain that's a bit relatable, so that like people watching are like they almost want to at certain points question whether they agree with what the villain's doing.
Yeah, I
And
really thought she'd have a more sympathetic backstory. I thought she'd have a family or children, and that she had a reason for what she's doing.
yeah, and I think like there's just certain things they did that took away a little bit of the empathy for Vadic, which as a changeling that was tortured by Starfleet, like you'd think we'd all be feeling empathy for her and saying, okay, well, I kind of understand. But it went like so much further the other way into like the whole realm of being like a doctor evil or like a Bond villain or like a cartoon villain.
Mm.
That some of that empathy was gone and it just made her a little less relatable. And then at a certain point, I don't think it's also completely her fault because I think the other issue is with the screenplay in that I probably would have liked her better if they almost needed to overutilize her doing evil stuff because nothing else was happening. So it would like cut back to the bridge, and instead of the plot moving forward because of something unfolding, like her finally telling Jack who he really is, it would just be her on the bridge being like, and several
I'm
times being,
evil. I'm evil. Oh,
yeah, to a certain point where I
watch
was
your
like,
mic part of your cord
oh, I
cable
should like
there.
tape this or something. I
Yeah,
should
just
like
put it
find a way.
around your collar or something would
Let's
probably
try
do
that.
it.
It might make noise with the collar though. Ever thought of that, Tim? Or I might be
It
really
did when you
quiet now.
moved it, but now it seems better.
I'll try to be quiet. Max said something
Yeah.
about follow-up series, which I think is a pretty interesting point that I didn't know about. So read that one, Tim.
There's going to
Ethan's
be an
reading
announcement of the
19
fall.
every.
Okay, yeah, there's been okay. Well, we didn't talk about it last time, but there was an announcement of an Academy series. But let's not worry about that. But there's been pushes for people are trying to call it Star Trek Legacy, and there's a desire from some people for Metalis to make a Star Trek series that doesn't include the TNG crew, and
Hmm.
I'm a little anxious about that.
Okay.
Because as it stands right now, I would tend to find what I've seen of season two and so far of season three would probably be unwatchable if it didn't have characters and actors that I already liked.
You're more of
So
a
I
yeah. I don't think you don't have any faith in Metalis at all. I think like maybe I think he's not
not
terrible.
yeah. I mean, we still have two more episodes. He could land. He could land it. He could land. He could totally pull off the
Oh,
landing.
that's another issue that I have that we can talk about in a bit as far as will this land. But I don't know. I think maybe he finally has a little more freedom, and maybe that's why the this season's better. And I think
Great,
maybe if he had had all the
maybe.
freedom season one through now. But yeah, I mean, like if there's a new series that doesn't have the TNG crew or any of the TNG crew, because it'd be cool if there was a spin-off, maybe like, Geordi or
Hmm. Well, Max
Geordi or
just
maybe
added
Geordi.
addendum that it might include legacy characters. That's the name Star Trek Legacy.
Yeah, that'd be,
Yeah, I don't know.
but here's the biggest thing I would say, if they're going to do that, please get back to Star Trek that deals with uh, learning and exploring political and social ideas and not always fighting for like 10 episodes of a season some big bad guy that's trying to like take over the universe. Like,
Without even telling us who the bad guy is, but instead like driving it on a bunch of arbitrary setup and reveals. Even the changings were like a confusing setup that we had to go through and then be revealed, and that didn't end
yeah,
up going
yeah,
anywhere.
no. And
Anyway,
see, that's the thing. That's the thing. If you put your faith in a writer who's going to set you up to go somewhere, you want it to go somewhere. It's like someone says, I'm going to come pick you up at your house and we're going to go on a trip. And then they pick you up and they take you to like the Irving to get a bag of chips. You're like, weren't we going on a trip?
and that's what
Don't
Metellus
set
keeps
me,
doing to me. I feel like I'm like
don't set me up.
you remember Arrested Development? There was there was a repeating image of the son on the sitting down on the front of the front door with a fishing rod waiting for his dad to take him fishing, and he'd never
I don't
come.
know this part, but
And anyway, that's sort of like a meme or like something that they kept on
yeah.
doing in Arrested Development. Arrested Development like invented memes before memes, but that's sort of like that's I'm the
Uh,
kid of Metalis, and he never delivers on the promises that he's going to go fishing with me. That's how I feel watching
yeah, we'll go play
Metalis.
catch or we'll go fishing or whatever this Saturday, and then like your father just like never shows up, and
Oh,
so yeah, there's been a lot of
Steve says,
oh,
tell the folks at home what Irving is.
oh gosh, yeah, no, Irving doesn't deserve that. Corner store.
Yeah.
Um, it's
That,
basically evil entity that controls the province we live in Canada.
oh, they'll cut us off. But okay, well, let's go on with the episode. Um,
All hail Irving. Let's go forward. Oh, you
Yeah.
lost
Okay.
your.
So we cut
Oh,
over to Jack, and Jack's doing his eye thing. So he's got this ability to take over people remotely. So this is sort of advancing on what he was doing with Sydney in the last episode. Which again, this is not Borg stuff. This is not a Borg thing we've ever seen
I would
before.
argue that it can be.
And we'll see.
We had this debate. We had
Yeah,
this debate.
I'm
I think
sure.
it can be Borg, but yeah.
But anyway, he does take over this guy. I've got a couple shots. Uh, Another shot where he like goes and he's like, "Oh, I've got a phaser," and then he goes to fight and he sees this lady with
Oh,
the
you took a
spike.
screenshot of.
Yeah, caught that one with the spike in her neck.
So I wasn't sure in this moment. Like, are we watching Star Trek or like a new John Carpenter film? This seemed much more like slasher film imagery. Like someone. And what was this changeling do? Like, okay, you're murdering the crew, but
What is
like,
that? Was
what
it?
is
I
going
assume it's
on?
one of those knives that they suddenly all take out when they fight rapid,
I
right?
don't know. This was. I mean, that alone kind of like spells one of the issues with with Star Trek right now is like this is not necessary. You don't need to see someone stabbed in the neck, basically stuck to the ship with like a spike. Like it's just silly and more horror-esque.
But this was a horror-esque
Anyway,
sequence,
horror.
right? His like sequences are horror-esque.
For what purpose? But back to Jack, though, and Jack jumping into people's bodies, you could almost say quantum leaping. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know why I'm making like a Scott Bakula reference, but anyway,
I wouldn't mind if
um,
Scott Bakula could be at Frontier Day, a hologram of
that's
Scott
true.
Bakula, because it's the
That's true.
25th, 250th anniversary of his thing.
That'd be kind of fun. But so Jack inadvertently gets this guy killed because he telepathically or through whatever way goes into his mind and controls him to kind of take a look around and says, we can't leave this room. It's all locked down, which is kind of weird because then later he clearly leaves the room and gets to the bridge pretty easily. And I don't really understand how that worked. But anyway, at this point, they're all locked down and he gets this guy in the hallway killed by going into his mind, and then he gets it's like pretty
And he had a
directly.
phaser, so he must be security.
Sure, but Jack's pretty directly the cause of this guy's death.
Assuming that he was able to hide on his own.
And just keeping in mind too that at this point when Jack does this, it's before Crusher, Beverly, and Picard, like the people that he's with, he hasn't really revealed yet like his superpower.
But
So he
before we
does
get to
this.
that scene, we jump
Yes,
over
yeah,
to the other ship. Oh, there's some people. They're scared. They're gonna die.
lots of scared people.
Oh, and then we get sort of the lineup of threats. She's like,
Yeah,
Vadic's like, I'll start killing people every 10 minutes. Classic Bond villain stuff.
yeah, I'm gonna take a long time to do stuff so that there's a chance for more plot to kind of or like characters to talk. But really, she just wants Jack, and it's a bit of an issue because like she has control of the ship's computers because she locks stuff down, but she can't just use the ship computers to like locate Jack
Or use the transporters
somewhere.
to transport them.
Yeah, there's a lot of things you'd think she could do with the power she now has being on the bridge, but instead she just chooses to gloat and dance and say evil stuff and threaten to kill everyone.
Yes, she
So
does. But meantime, oh, and I think before this shot, we do see that there's, or no, it's before the later shot, but we do see that the cloaking device is on the shuttle.
yeah, which we had kind of like jokingly said in one of the other reviews of an episode where we're like, oh, maybe the cloaking device is on the shuttle,
Last
and it
episode,
is.
yeah, where'd the cloaking device go? Oh, it was somewhere. So we have sort of a
It's
great
on the
moment
shuttle.
between, or there's a couple scenes actually. I've kind of mushed them together, but there's another scene later. But this is the first scene between Riker and Troy, and it goes on. It's a long scene, but it's a great scene. I really like seeing Frakes and Sturgis interact. She says something about like Imzadi. Why'd I only ever teach you one word? And she comes up with a new word, interu, interu, as a
I
Betazoid
didn't
word.
remember the new word.
Yeah, I wrote down interu. I didn't write down what it meant.
Uh,
I don't know if she said that exactly.
I knew she was a little bit well, not annoyed, but like poking fun at him for using Mzadi like too much. Like, why didn't I teach you another word? I'm going to teach you a new one. Maybe she just made that new one up. She's just
That's what I
messing with
felt.
Riker.
Um,
Mzadi wasn't even a word either. She just was like, I'm going to make this human say some weird stuff.
she did reference her ability to not detect changelings and thus recognize what a changeling is or isn't, which we sort of like wouldn't Troy recognize changelings. And there's a plot point in this scene where Riker admits, which contradicts what people said in the last episode about the torture, but whatever, that he gave Vadic his command code, which is how Vadic was able to take over the computer so easily, presumably.
Yeah,
It was a little confusing, but I think that's sort of just the plot point for how Vadic got to the where she is right at the moment as far as controlling all the computers.
right. Yeah, and then there's a little bit of talk of when the changelings first arrived to get Deanna and how did they do this, and then one of them posed as Riker and had the Riker charm and there's a joke about he was better in bed or something just to mess with Riker,
But not good at making pizza.
and not good at making pizza. That was it. Yeah. There's a couple, most of the scene between Riker and Deanna is pretty well acted, well written, like a decent scene. It was I think just because the scene though came between these moments with Vatic and me just thinking, get on with it, get on with it, get on with it, and then this scene came up, I was like, I didn't enjoy it as much because it just felt sandwiched between stalling. Um, but I still really
I like the
enjoyed it.
scene.
I
It
just
was a
wish.
pretty long scene. I remember it's like several minutes just between two characters, but I've been craving just the interaction between these two characters, so I'm for it. I'm okay with it.
Sorry, I'm just reading some comments too, I'm trying to stay focused on what each comment is about. I know Max said at one point Starfleet Academy can frig right off. Have never been into that idea. And Gay Carboy says, which they never seem to do anything with. I don't know. Is that Academy they're referring to?
It may have been what we were saying at the moment.
Yeah, that's why it's hard with the comments. Be specific. If you comment, you have to like say what your comment's about.
Uh,
Um, because then Max said no was when they were looking for the Titan. But I'm not sure what that context was either. But
They're
anyway,
looking at the cloaking device on the shuttle. Oh
oh,
yeah,
the
yeah.
cloaking device.
No, well, because we speculated about this last episode, and we were right. Meanwhile, Worf and Raffi took a shuttle with a cloaking device to sneak over onto the ship while Vatic was distracted by force fields so that they
Which
could
was
save the.
it was funny because yeah, the last review, we were talking about how it was ridiculous that Worf was just gone with Raffi, and then you were like, no, they're plotting to like take the Shrike, and I was like, oh, and then you were like 100% right with that one. I didn't
Sometimes
believe you,
I
Tim.
fall. Sometimes
Yeah.
I'm right. Usually I'm wrong, and what I think tracks is the writers never agree with what I think is making sense. But
No, but that one you were bang on, like, in a way that almost scared me, Tim. I got to be honest. It's like when Homer was right in that Simpsons episode about the Chihuahuas, the asteroid getting the Chihuahua's head.
I'm scared too.
Anyway,
So we go back to
yeah,
the
I know.
screen.
I'm scared.
So there was, I think, on the previous episode, Shaw had like one line, and he was dead naming Seven again. And there's sort of an interaction here between Shaw and Seven, where Shaw's like, "You should have killed me," or "You should have like not let them on the bridge by shooting me," or something. I didn't entirely something to do with the
No, blow
setup.
up the turbo
Yeah,
lift.
blow up the turbo lift so they couldn't get up here. I mean, they should have had some sort of plan to stop Vatic from getting to the bridge, since it was part of their plan to let Vatic on the ship. But either way, she was
Right.
like, "Stop, stop! My name's Seven, and I did made the right
I
call.
don't
I don't trade
I
people's
don't trade
lives."
lives.
Yeah, which this is legit, I guess. And he goes on about consequences that haven't happened yet, not just you or me, but the entire ship. So I feel like it's trying to explore his leadership style, but I have
Mm.
yet to actually see him be a leader, make a single order that anyone's followed, or make a single decision himself. So I'm still been waiting for
Yeah,
him to sort of do that arc thing that I think he needs to do, and I think they're trying to do that, but they just don't have time, basically.
right. Well, fair enough to some degree, but I also think they're underusing and then sometimes um, just waving away characters, and then they come in when they're needed. It's like Shaw's one of these characters that kind of does stuff when they want him there to just say something, but then like you said, it sounded like he was trying to show some leadership, show some like I'm the captain, whatever, but then he just doesn't show that in any other way. So it's a little, I don't know, almost contrary to his character to, or at least he's not stepping up all the time. It's just he just feels written into the scene when there's a certain moment that needs to happen. Um, so yeah.
Poor Shaw. And someone just commented Shaw is a non-character, which he felt like. Um, and Steven's like his whole arc was really just hating. Yeah, his whole arc was really just hating the Borg. And I thought he was going to have more of a different type of arc where he came to terms with not dead naming Seven and called her Seven and sort of became a better leader. But no, we can't waste much more time on him. I don't think. Um,
Okay.
There's another scene back here. I'm not able to do. We're cut back to and Sydney's there too, but there's a couple lines here that are important. Picard says something that sounds like a clue, referring to what's going on with Jack. He says something more infinitely complicated in mind. So something more infinitely complicated is happening with Jack, and then Jack just says straight up, "I am not a changeling." So I think that's a clue for the
Right.
audience that he's in fact not a changeling. Despite, I was pretty sure he was a changeling based on the Vadic's lines in the previous episode where she said she referenced some stuff, some language that was used before by changelings about the link, and she was like, "You're gonna want to. I need to show you. The link is so much easier to show you than to tell you." I thought she was talking about the link, but she said other stuff later in
Yeah.
this episode. We'll get to.
Well, now it's seeming like in some ways when the writers were toying with, who could be the main bad guy, who could be the main antagonist or force against the crew, it might have been thrown out as an idea of misdirection that the Great Link and the Collective have similar types of words that describe them, and so, like even like many
Hmm.
voices or
And
return
we'll,
to
we'll
like
get to that in that scene later in the episode where Vadic makes a bunch of those references. But the language she's using in this episode then is a lot more like the Borg. And you can kind of say like, oh,
right.
we can interpret her previous language as being the Borg too.
Yeah, so I
But
think given the fact we've kind of identified that the writers seem to always want to cloak things, um, so that then they can be revealed in a certain way. There's not a lot of direct writing where like I feel like in some ways the show would have benefited this season from just knowing who the bad guy was right from the
develop
beginning,
the
or
bad guy.
maybe episode 2, maybe episode 3 at the latest. We know who the main bad guy is. We know the motivation. Don't hide that from us the
Then
whole
you can
time because
develop
as
the
an
bad
audience,
guy, develop the motivation, make it make sense.
yeah. So I just think that again, it's a little unwise to write a season the way that it's been written and keep things hidden for so long because it hurts the audience's opportunity, like our chance to get invested in it and to feel the tension and the stress is like we don't have much of that opportunity because we still
Hmm.
don't know
It's a
who we're
different type
supposed
of,
to.
it's trading for a different type of tension and stress and relationship and game that you're playing. We're sort of speculating and playing along in a completely different way where we're not identifying with the characters. Like I've said several times in our reviews, basically it's reveal driven, not character driven. And the
Right, which
moments of the show that actually work is when they're actually being character driven, but they're so often just reveal driven.
yeah, and I think that it's this style of writing that I still circle back to shows like Lost, where it did really well because it hooked audiences and people wanted to binge these shows. So it would be like you have to watch the next episode. Even that one didn't pay off well. I think sometimes when the focus is so much on these cliffhangers, it cheapens then the rest of the story and the rest of the character development because you're leaving that behind in order to just try to create these like cool moments. But and then it's really backfired on this season because of these 3 episodes ending with cliffhangers that didn't lead anywhere to the next episode. So the first one was Deanna and Riker seeing Deanna, and then the episode right after they didn't follow up on, and then episode 7, Vadic says we're going to reveal this, basically next episode, and doesn't, and then this episode, the red door is still like we're going to see what's behind it, and still not. It's like just stop doing that. Stop it. It's not working. It's not working.
So in this scene,
A few comments.
he's got okay. I can do something. He starts trying to explain his power to like take over people, and then um, Beverly's like, he's not hallucinating, um, and he's like, I can do
Yeah,
it.
she immediately
And we've got to try something. So he starts. We see the red eye thing, and it's in that Bajoran guy.
because he says he can go on the bridge. He says he can, if I Picard, is there a way that I can do something on the bridge because I can get to the bridge with my brain jumping?
And he must have had an idea of
Yeah,
who was on the bridge and the blocking on the bridge because he chooses exactly the right guy who has a huge computer screen right next to his hand.
yeah, and that makes a good point. And again, I think it's because one of the review channels I was watching, and we'll get to this plot point about data and lore, which was really cool, but someone made the comment about this could have been an entire episode,
Oh,
and I think
100%.
as well as Jack's power and us learning about his power could have been an entire episode of us figuring out and learning how he does it. Because you're right, it doesn't really make sense that he can just jump to the bridge with no knowledge of who's there. Like, how does he? What's the mechanism behind it? And I
Well,
guess we're just
I'll
supposed to
talk about
believe
that
that,
scene
like,
when we get to that scene, but I have a lot of opinion. But basically, I think it's the best conflict we've seen in all of Star Trek Picard for a lot of specific reasons.
Yeah, I'm still talking about Jack though jumping to the
Yeah,
bridge. Like, yeah, you're talking about Lauren Data, but yeah,
yeah.
we don't really know how does he do that? How does he get into a specific person's mind when he doesn't? I mean, maybe does he just like picture that person and
Yeah, because how would he know that? Because I don't even think he
uh,
knows this guy that well. This guy was sitting in, I don't. He's the tactical guy, so he was sitting on in one of the chairs, I think, at the front. So I don't think he's even interacted
worked
with
out
that.
well though, because it did end up being
We have some
someone who could like
speculation.
punch in the password. Yeah,
GCP
yeah, hit some
says
comments up.
perhaps Jack can jump from person to person and see through their eyes until he chooses. I guess until he chooses the right one.
Oh yeah, I
I
mean,
mean, that would make sense because
sure.
we didn't see
It
that, and
doesn't.
it was. But I mean, I don't think it's important. He starts putting in Picard's code. Um, but he doesn't do it smooth enough, and Vatic catches him.
Smooth enough, yeah.
And basically, Vatic's like, "How'd you know Picard's code?" Which I don't. How did Vatic know Picard's code?
Well, doesn't she just suddenly say like, "Oh, Jack, are you
Yeah,
like?"
she
Doesn't she
catches that
realize it's
Jack is
Jack?
doing that, and because she knows about Jack's powers, so she must have been briefed by the Krang head of all of Jack's powers, or these are commonly known Borg powers now.
Oh, I think she knew.
Just,
I think she's been briefed. I think she knows like what Jack's. I mean, because she talks to him, like she knows a lot about him. She knows
hmm.
what's going on. She could help him. She could, but again, like it goes nowhere. It's one of those things where Vatic and saying all this stuff is just cryptic talking to like leave
Hmm.
little breadcrumbs for the audience, but not actually do anything. And so again, it becomes if you do a little bit of that, who cares? But like when it's constantly talking like that, it just gets really
Yeah.
frustrating.
Matt pointed out it did say Picard's code on the screen when he entered it in, which is kind of a silly thing that a secret computer code that's like in this hostage situation that you're supposed to use to take over the ship again would say Picard's code. But yeah,
Be funny if the computer just like chimed in and said like, "Thank you for entering Picard's secret code," and then Vadic's like,
press
"What?
OK if you
Picard's
want to
secret
take the
code?"
ship back over.
Yeah, please press OK.
But
I
okay,
like
but
it.
then we have that big scene where she's gonna shoot someone, and she does that thing where like, I'm gonna shoot this person, no, I'm gonna shoot this person, and it ends up being the bald Vulcan lady who dies,
Yeah.
and it's dramatic, and Jack is sad about it, and she's evil
It's
about it.
sad. Is that a sad face, Tim? Is that not like a?
She's evil about it. Jack
I
is
don't know.
sad. I'm just saying Jack's sad.
She's evil about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Vatic becomes evil about it. It's just constantly evil. Yeah, I would agree. So,
So I think this is a scene maybe where we get the cloak. We see the cloak shadow. I didn't grab the screenshot quickly, but we have some nice moments between uh, Troy and Riker again, where they sort of admit that they like don't like the cabin they were living in and want to move to the city.
oh right,
But I liked it. It was a good moment.
was it a bit of shade at season one?
That's a way to interpret it. They're like, man, we didn't even
Were
like
they
being
throwing a
there.
little shade?
And they kept on saying, like, man,
Yeah,
I don't even like Nepenthe. Yeah, Nepenthe is a horrible place. There's all those annoying birds there. And they're doing annoying
yeah.
pizza scenes. Like, no one likes Nepenthe. Yeah,
They didn't hold back at all.
it does feel like a lot of the sort of dismissing and reference. There is a specific animosity between season one. It feels like maybe I'm reading that in too much.
No, there's been a few different things I think where they're kind of poking fun at. They're aware of it. Like the
Mhm.
writers are aware, I think, of how bad season one and two were received. Um, so it almost is smart to
But they wouldn't have
play
known how
that like,
bad season two was received when they wrote all this, because this would have already been filmed at least before they even showed.
oh yeah,
There's a
true,
weird
that's
dynamic
true.
there.
Well,
But I mean, I'm so fascinated by what the writing room is between two and three. But yeah, that's a discussion for another day. But they have sort of a moment. But you know
yeah,
what happens here? Then the goon shows up.
yeah, and they're in trouble because nobody in a cloaked vehicle. Oh, the goon is Worf.
Oh, the goon comes up. I didn't have a good screenshot of it because it's very fast. But then the goon gets like stabbed through the heart and falls over. And then there's Worf. And I really I like this entrance to Worf much better than his original entrance with Raffi. Like I thought this was a fun one.
Can I say something now?
Oh yeah.
Well, I just think like Worf. The only thing about like he he's killed a few people in like a super dishonorable way. Like he stabbed a guy in the back and he decapitated someone. Like that's totally would be like against Worf's code of honor. Plus, he talks about how he's like a pacifist now, but he's the only guy in this season like just killing people left and right
Yeah, he's like,
from
I'm a
like the
pacifist who's constantly cutting people's heads off and thinking about sending them to other people. I don't know.
and I think it would have been funnier, in my opinion, if Worf really if they wanted to go with him being kind of more of a pacifist now. And I know there's a bit of a joke around like, he's a pacifist, but
He's
he's
a
still a
Klingon
Klingon.
version of a pacifist.
Yeah, so I get that, but I think it would be funny if like instead of like killing people, like sometimes he just like I don't know, like chokes them out and then like puts them in a sack. A sack with I don't know, a lot of chamomile and like different smelling salts.
Yeah, Mac and the GCB are talking a little bit about the whether there's a different writing room, and we touched on this a little bit the last episode. I mean, I wasn't in the writing room, but at the end of the day, Metalis was the head writer for both season two and season three. And the fact that they filmed season three right after season two doesn't mean there's less continuity in the writing room. I feel like that means there's more continuity in the writing room. But at the same time, there doesn't seem to be any sort of narrative continuity between season two and season three. So I have
Well,
no.
something's gone on here. Something's happened here, and it's not just a matter of like, oh, they just so happened to write it differently. There was a big decision made between two and three, beyond just it's tonally different, the writing, the characters,
Well, you can
there's a
almost you
lot
can
about it.
tell certain scenes, certain dialogue, certain setups are not tracking with the previous scenes in season three. Like I can almost pick out what I think are the rewrites and what I think are sort of the B the B director sets, and I feel
So
like you can almost do that, but it's like that's still the
yeah,
speculation from my point of view.
yeah. No, I agree that there's still bad writing in season three. Like there's still some really
But there's good writing
almost
too. There
amateur
is like
writing.
good writing rewrites that are put in trying to
Well,
make things work.
the tone, the setting, the characters is better by far. Um, so I'm like, even if Metalis was, the head writer in two and three, either someone like got to him and said, do this differently, like something changed fundamentally between the two seasons beyond just like, um, this season's just slightly better. It's like, it's a whole different show. It feels like.
Hmm.
Anyway, we
Yeah, we
should keep
gotta
moving.
focus on this. Oh, so Worf's
So
cool.
Worf
There's a little sort of reference to their uh triangle
romance.
romance, and it's clever and funny, and yeah, I liked it. I was cool with it.
I've counted the days. I have been counting the days until I would see you again. And I don't know. I forget exactly what he
Yeah.
says, but he's
One thing
basically
of
like,
note is that it did seem like they hadn't seen each other in like 20 years. Like it seemed like none of these people have interacted much, other than that sort of drink that wine bottle that Picard gave Jordy. There haven't been a lot of contact between them. So that is the
yeah.
feeling I'm getting with these reunions.
And that is a good point Steve just made. He said, whether or not there was time for audience response, there's still people who can realize it's not going well. That's a
Yeah.
good point because sometimes we assume that like writing teams can't tell if their own show has been successful before an audience sees it. And that's not necessarily true. They might have watched it or started seeing the dailies, which is basically like clips of things that they were filming and realized actually it's going south. It's not that good. And they internally decided that season three would be very different. That's very
I'm sure
possible.
they do test screenings, and test screenings impact re-edits and things like that. And I know there were late, um, there were there. It felt like both season two and season three were difficult shoots, just the context of being rushed and in COVID and all that stuff too.
And budgetary. Like I don't think they had a
Yeah,
huge budget to
they
work
haven't
with.
left they seriously are like five sets,
Oh, you
and they
guessed this,
haven't
Tim,
left.
too. And I did find out that they did redress the Los. Was it the Los Serena?
La Serena,
And redressed it
La
as the
Serena.
Shrike.
Yeah,
Like basically, it was the same set that they had to like turn over and turn into the. So like clearly, there's some. But here's the thing too, and I'm going to be quick on this because I want to move on. But um, you were talking about, oh, this is all taking place on a ship, or the sets. They don't have that many sets. But think about the budget and production value of this season versus like the TNG production value. Like it's way higher, it's way more expensive. the thing that kind of makes me sad
Hmm.
is that it's not necessary. When it comes to Star Trek fans and what we love, it's not about spending more money on explosions and cool, flashy this and that and whatnot. Like you can save
Oh,
money on
100%.
sets.
Some of the best episodes, like Cause and Effect, I keep mentioning, were basically bottle episodes.
Yeah, just revisit what made it good in the first place. It's so simple. It almost seems too simple. Like, how do you make a good Star Trek? Well, just look at what made Star Trek good in the original series, the TNG and Voyager and Deep Space Nine. Any of these series that like followed true to Star Trek, the you know, gosh,
There's a lot.
utopian.
There's a lot you could
Uh,
say there.
well, that's the thing that's been really hitting me hard with the new Picard. Wow, that rhymed. Okay, let's move on. We don't have time.
Yeah. So they go see.
Freestyle.
There's a scene just before this where they're like, Sydney's like, man, we could take over the ship if we had a super smart computer. I have. Who
But too
could
bad we
do that?
don't.
And it's like, it's
Yeah.
Data. So they go see Data. And there's like, you're not a changeling. And Picard says like, you last time last, did something they only
That
knew
was
about the
fun
wine, about the wine. He
because
said pedestrian at best, wine taste.
yeah, they made another joke about Picard's wine, and I think this is someone else had mentioned too that like all of the shade at Picard's wine could also be some shade at the first two seasons because they
Oh,
spent
I never
so
heard about
much
that.
time. Yeah, because they spent
Yeah, they
so
kept
much
going
time
back
at
to
the
that one scene.
yeah. So everyone's just like, that wine. Nobody likes the wine. That's pretty funny. Anyway, I love it.
Uh, and but it's pretty cool. So they're like, but Jordy's like basically, oh well, Jordy's like basically we got to do something. I thought, oh, there's a scene later where they show it better. But Jordy's like basically we've got to Data's out of commission right now.
We have to
Something
drop the
we
partition.
have to drop the partition, and there's a visual about that later on.
Drop the partition.
Um,
Drop the partition. This is like I'm a yoga instructor, and sometimes I'll do the drop the partition move in the yoga classes.
yeah, maybe I don't have a better screen of this,
And then
but
all of my yoga students start fighting
yeah,
their true inner personalities.
they're bicameral minds.
Either
Um,
bicameral. That's it.
that's not a thing. I just made that up. But yeah, and then so we got the
Oh,
first sort of
bicameral is a
scene
thing.
where we cut up. We get a sort of idea that inside Jada's head is the red and the blue, lore and Data. And but there's another scene where we deal with it later. Meanwhile, back on the Shrike, everyone's freed, and we see Picard's body.
Mm-hmm.
And they do establish those some very important things. They say they removed a section of his parietal lobe where the
Yeah.
aromatic syndrome was, or what they thought the faux aromatic
Aromatic
syndrome.
syndrome.
They removed
Aromatic
something
syndrome.
from his brain, and now we don't care about the body anymore. And spoiler alert, they blow up the ship and the body anymore. So they don't even care about the body anymore. What mattered is that someone had already removed the part of his brain that was important. And that was the parietal lobe with the aromatic or the faux aromatic syndrome.
Well, and it's um, the same thing that Jack has that they thought was aromatic syndrome, which is now giving him special powers and making his eyes go red. Is the same thing that
That's what it's.
Soong discovered maybe was not aromatic syndrome, was something else, which is what um, Vatic indirectly through the big floating head wanted her to get
That's what it seems
from
to be. Let's talk
from
about
the
that maybe
Daystrom Institute.
at the end, as far as our speculations of what this
Talk about it
aromatic
now.
syndrome is. But we have
I'm ready.
more clues, more breadcrumbs for us to follow.
I don't know what I'm doing right now.
Um,
This isn't tea; it's ayahuasca. Where is it? So I'm having a soul-defining trip right now.
wow, that would fit some of Data's soul-defining trips that he takes.
That's
I
true.
don't know
Yeah.
if I have did I have a scene of that? Yeah, it was okay. We'll go to that. So we cut to a scene where we start seeing the pieces of Data's memory, and a significant one we get is the little holographic memento that Data had of Yar, which Denise Crosby did a tweet and sort of shouted out that she was really happy to see that Yar was in this episode at least. Um, I've been really hoping to see Tasha. I've been really hoping to see Denise Crosby and Will Wheaton. I'd really like to have the whole crew back together if we're gonna have a bunch of cameos at Frontier Day. Um, but we have
Well,
Denise
Tasha's
Crosby.
not alive.
No, she's not.
That
But there's so Data's not alive and Picard's not alive either.
well, okay, sure, fair enough.
And Stella's alive, and there's other things that could happen, and Will Wheaton's
Yeah, yeah.
somewhere. But anyways, we
Well,
do get her here, and she is an important memory, an important aspect of Data's identity.
yeah, a fully functioning memory, programmed in many techniques. And we see. Do you have screenshots of any of the other memories? We see
No, I
pretty
did
different,
before. What do I
including
have?
Spot.
I do have a shot of Spot in the climax scene later on. That's not in this
See,
scene.
that's what I was asking about.
So let's jump to that and talk about Data at that scene then, because we go
It's a
back.
great scene. The scene with Laura and Data.
Yeah,
We go back.
we go back to. So he said, "I'm going to buy us some time." He shows up on the ship. The computer says that he's got something in his hand, but we don't know what it is, and it's some sort of bomb. And he's like, "I'm pretty sure it's going to kill me, and I'm what matters." So he's turned the tables on the hostage situation. Um, and
Uh-huh.
uh, and then so they get everyone on the bridge, goes back to the conference room except Seven. Seven stays out, and she's like, "I'm gonna back you up."
Yeah, which in that moment seemed like Jack had a plan and Seven just kind of screwed it up.
Seems like it, yeah. But
But I mean, yeah, and Jack literally says to her, "You should have left," or like, and because they had a plan at this point, and the plan we'll see here in a second. But yeah, so
yeah.
Seven
So there
stays
was a
on the bridge.
line here that Vatic says to Seven. How fitting is it for you to stay to witness this? How fitting is
Now,
it
why
is?
would she
Sorry,
say
how
that?
fitting it is for you to stay to witness. So what's fitting about Seven?
Why would it be fitting that Seven would be there? Let's
Hmm.
think about that.
And then she says a bunch of stuff here, bunch of like vague stuff. So I just have my notes to the main source. She says shadow of isolation, loneliness, so many voices. Those are like the three things I noted. But she says a bunch of stuff, but it's a bunch of sort of vaguely Borg stuff.
Yeah.
So
Well, I
definitely
mean,
the
even just
voices we've heard, loneliness, isolation. That's all stuff we've heard describing the feeling of being in the Borg collective versus getting out of the Borg collective.
oh, and also just a note too. When Jack left his body and went even first into the securities officer body, do you remember how he could see through their eyes? Do you remember the way it showed him seeing through their eyes?
With his eyes would turn red, and then their eyes would turn red.
Right, but do you remember like his view through the other person's body was kind of like this weird, almost like fisheye image. It like was distorted,
Yeah,
and it
yeah. It
reminded
was
me a
distorted,
lot.
and it was very horror movie dynamic.
Yeah, and it reminded me a lot of the vision through the Borg's eyes in First Contact, I
First
think, when you could
contact.
see through their eyes. There was a bit of that like weird, like fisheye, like awkward lens kind of vibe. So even that was a hint in my mind.
Yeah.
But
I think we've seen other similar things of people taking over other people and had similar sort of effects to make it clear that it's a perspective
like the
too.
Borg.
But definitely like the Borg. But a key problem that, of course, is did I note transponder? What that thing is? The thing is, to me, if if there really is Borg going on, I feel like Seven's connected to the Borg. She was able to take over the cube in season one, and all along she has the transponder and that brain thing and the thing in her brain that communicates with the Borg. And why wouldn't she be able to detect any sort of Borgness going on from Jack? They even try to sort of reference Seven's connection to the Borg here. So shouldn't Seven be like, I'm getting Borg vibes from Jack? That's what I'm saying.
That
One of the
would be a
things.
great line. I'm getting Borg vibes. Anyone else getting Borg vibes?
Is that what we're getting in this episode? Vibes of Borg. Um, but then meanwhile, we have a
Interesting,
the
Mac.
conflict
Very.
scene. So this is the sort of the climax or the first sort of climax. there's sort of two climaxes in this episode, and then they do that thing where they cut back and forth, which isn't much. But right here, we get sort of the conflict between Data and Lore, and it sort of becomes this sort of partition is broken up, and it seems like Lore is the commanding one. With a key memory, of course, is Spot, his cat, and Lore is taking each of these memories.
Right, and I think this scene is really well done, and because even though, sometimes they create tension by there's something happening that you know probably isn't going to happen. So it appears Data is losing the battle with Lore, and I think we're pretty aware as the audience that Data isn't going to die right here because they just brought Data back for what, like the third time after he's died so many times. He's not going to die, but I truly felt he was at risk. It actually, like, I felt the tension. I felt concerned.
Well,
I
that's
was
the
like, oh
thing.
no, Laura's winning.
We definitely felt sort of a conflict that he was concerned, but there was no twist to this conflict. I think we knew how it was going to end in that Data had some sort of was going to just sort of through his way go through the way he actually was to actually conquer conflict. Like I feel like I recognized the ending right away, and I feel like even if you weren't like this is gonna be exactly that type of ending, you got a sense that there of what was going on. It wasn't like there was a setup to a twist or a setup to a reveal. This was sort of a much more character-driven conflict between two types of characters. That to me, like I was saying earlier, I feel like this is the best conflict sequence in all of Picard. There wasn't any twist. There wasn't any sort of um, dynamic where th there was sort of arbitrary outside scales. Instead, we had two characters that actually were acting like they should be, acting like they were developed, and actually dealing with that. So remember last episode, I was when they were saying Lore was like, Jordy's like, Lore loves chaos. Lore loves being a arbitrary plot point. And I was like, that's not what Lore is. Lore's entire thing is he feels superior, but deep down he has a lot of sort of shame and insecurity because he was rejected by his father and his colonists. Remember? That's what I said. And
That's what he said.
and Data was sorry, Lore was acting like that again. Lore was like getting all these memories of Data, and he wanted the memories of Data because that was something that made Data unique and what made Data special. Because there's always that sort of dynamic between Lore and Data.
Right, and that's what was pissing off. He was using the I don't know, Lore's like desire to own Data, to be better than Data, like against him. And yeah, it worked really well. And you knew the whole time that Data had a plan. But I think the other thing in the scene is like it's nice when there is kind of a reveal happening, but it's like you said, it's not so there's no like hidden tricks happening. It's Data versus Lore. You know something's probably going to happen, and you realize it's not even that long of a scene. It's super fast, and
It's
then
way too short, I feel.
yeah,
And that just
but it was
I
really well
loved it,
done.
and could have gone on longer. But as it's
Yeah,
happening, all
so
these sort of memories, including Spock, are being sort of consumed. You can see Lore sort of being happy about taking each of these memories,
right,
and Data's getting weaker, and then you see sort of
so he thinks he's winning,
the dots are turning red, and so it looks like Lore's
and he is
winning.
winning
And then
because he's
this is
consuming Data's memories.
we still
Right?
have the
Doesn't that
shot.
mean he's beating Data?
Sorry, do I still have the shot of Geordi? Oh, I don't have the shot of Geordi anymore. But Geordi basically says, it looks like Data's surrendering, 'cause- which is good to say like
Yeah,
this.
and so then it's like, oh, he used the title of the episode in the sequence.
And but
There's a few reasons why surrender is a good title for the episode,
but
but yeah,
yeah,
so he's surrendering.
he's being sort of like it's like a going with the flow Taoist thing. He's sort of accepting the loss, but in it,
Yeah, but
he's
the thing
really
that's
giving his entire self to Lore.
well, yeah, and that's the thing that's great about it is that it follows with the philosophy, it follows with Data, and it follows with something that would actually trick and then potentially defeat Lore because Data, by giving him his memories, the thing that Lore wants so badly, Lore freely, like basically takes on Data, like basically takes
Yeah,
Data into himself, which then gives Data
it's not like
the
Lore was trying to defeat Data, but Data
checkmate.
wasn't trying to defeat Lore. Data was trying to synthesize the thesis and the antithesis
Right.
to become even stronger together by sort of giving into the foe. And because he was the one doing that, he ended up being sort of the dominant, or not the dominant, but the being the true sort of person out of the synthesis.
Ah. I love it.
And
I love Data
he
and
says,
Data's
"We are
character, and like just
becoming us, or becoming me." I didn't take on many of the lines, but they're sort of, and then he finally says, "Goodbye, brother," but it's not like a goodbye because together they are,
no, it's kind of like you lost.
but also they both win.
You got it. Got him.
I really like that. I really like that sort of philosophy. I really like that sort of the idea that a key part of Data's personhood is that sort of bicameral synthesis between two
Yeah.
conflicting ideas that you can sort of work together to become one.
Yeah. It's crazy that having not seen Data since Insurrection, I guess we saw him in season
No, he was in
one
season
as
one,
like a,
right? But as like a
but he
dream
was like,
and then a dead
yeah, he was
body.
like in, but like seeing, Data, like Data being Data and thinking like Data and Data's memories. And um, this could have been like all of season three, and I still would have been like, it was totally worth like seeing
Yeah,
Data do this and
I
be,
100% agree. And it works so well for their characters and how their characters should have ended and how their characters should resolve. And
yeah, yeah. So I think really well done, really well done. And Data, and also it feels good, like the Data who is now has kind of come out of this process. I like this kind of evolved version of Data, that he's not quite the same, but he is, but he isn't. It doesn't feel as silly as when Data had the emotion chip and he was just kind of acting weird and singing and like doing like, even though I did kind of like that. I know a lot of people hated that. I didn't hate it as much as some people did.
it was sort of just a
But
comic relief for the movie rhythm, comedy beats,
yeah, I
which is
I
Worf
thought it
in
was
this.
kind of,
Worf's the comedy beat guy in this.
yeah, which I'm not I think it's okay to a certain degree, but Worf, he is not a merry man.
It's unavoidable. He's not a married man. Um, but yeah,
I
this
am not a
dynamic
merry man.
goes great, and then it sort of
Yeah.
ends, and it comes out, and they're like, "Who is it?" It's Data, and like, "We need your help, Data." And he's like, "Just a moment," and you can see
This
all the
shot,
the dots are all blue now because it's Data,
I love it.
and then
The
sort
dots
of
are all blue.
we get that sort of sequence where the tide is turned, and Raffi's
Hey
there.
Tim,
Yep.
you know what it should have done? The dots shouldn't have turned blue. They should have turned a combination of blue and red, purple.
Actually, I kind of agree with you there. 'Cause- but it's a little
Right?
important because
Right?
there's a couple questions in this scene and in the sort of the conference scene where they ask about Data, what are you, or like how you, like you're a new and improved Data, and he's like, I'm still the original Data, just a little bit more. And like there's a couple lines that just like it's a little ambiguous what he is, but I would have liked the purple.
Yeah, I don't know. It would have been, I mean, it's really like, it's a small detail, but if I was on that set and I was one of the the director of lights, if I was the director of lights,
I agree. So
okay,
then,
good.
so I really like this climax of it, but then there's another climax of the episode, and they go into this sequence that they kept doing all throughout Picard season one, season two, where the climax of the episode they frantically cut between like an action sequence and then like a
Yeah,
decision-y sequence, and
trying to make it feel bigger.
yeah, and it just none of it just never worked. It just for whatever reason, just the type of editing has just never worked for me as the conflict. I've always sort of found it awkward. Raffi comes in and she's fighting with swords, and now all the bad guys drop their
Why?
phasers and fight swords. I,
Why
again,
is it a
I
sword
sort of
fight?
like Raffi, but she shouldn't be here. It should have been Worf, and Worf should have been Worf should have been. I don't know if I said this last episode, but basically Worf should have been introduced in the first episode. His handler should have been Roe or someone like, and then Worf could have done it. Like, unfortunately, Raffi just ended up not being adding anything to
Yeah,
the
I think
season.
like they brought her in, like Rafi into the season, like okay, but I think the problem is like having a character that you, because they dropped every other character right from the first two seasons,
Hmm.
so suddenly like you're not getting anyone carryover. You're bringing in Worf, who's just got such a rich history with the show and with, but then instead of pairing Worf with like the cast that he knows and works with well, they pair Worf with Raffi, and they're trying to, and I think it almost like, I hate to say it, but kind of like cheapens Worf's character to be like partnered up with Raffi as opposed to like being on the ship earlier with Picard and with Geordi and with like the best scenes for Worf have been when he's playing off of the crew. And it's not to say that like of course it's good to introduce new characters and have Worf play off new characters, but the fact that he's been like kind of partnered up with Raffi for so long, and then they have these kind of weird lines where like after she sword fights changelings who could clearly like and easily change into any shape or form, where they could literally change into like chains and like hook up her swords, or like change into one giant sword and then the other
How
one
are how
uses
are
that
swords
sword.
even hurting changelings? I mean,
I don't know.
it's implicit these aren't normal changelings. They're new rules changelings that can be defeated by swords.
Well, it's funny how I've noticed that a lot of the issues with the changelings, that ends up being the excuse. Like people are like, but these are new changelings. And I think it's
Which
like
I mean is fine, but
you're right.
I don't get changelings were completely changelings. There had to be a reason why Starfleet was taken over by something. But but Vadic and the goons being changelings they haven't been changelings. They haven't felt like changelings. They haven't acted like
No.
changelings. They haven't done any
Right.
changeling things in any scene in any way.
And I'm not a huge fan of any scene also that like felt like somebody somewhere just said, "Oh yeah, sword fight. Yeah, that'll be cool." But wasn't really like cool and it didn't make sense. Like you're every changeling up until this point has been using like phasers or like some kind of like energy weapon, and yet suddenly like Raffi finds like four of them or five of them in a hallway that all have swords. Like this is the future. Why are people in a hall like on a spaceship with swords? Even in Star Wars, they had lightsabers. They had like, it's not friggin' metal swords for no reason. What is like? The more I think about it, the more it annoys me.
Okay, let's move on. So it's cutting back and forth between an action sequence on the bridge, and then they're back to the. This is more of the sword fighting stuff. I was just trying to get it, the screenshots, get that sense of the cutting
Oh, I
back and
wanted to
forth.
get mad about it,
Uh,
so thanks for having that.
Sorry
That's a
about
good
that.
screenshot. That looks like a Polaroid photo taken from like the 1980s,
And he's like,
like on a roller
anyway,
coaster or
they turn
something.
on. I think I got a good shot. Okay, so they turn on their the bomb, which is actually a force field, and there's a Data did something. Data like took back over the ship, and he's like, I'm taking over the ship now, and he said something about like
Yeah, the way he says it. What did he say?
he's the
He's like,
security guard is back or something. Which I realized something that I didn't get, and it's ridiculous, is that Moriarty was never there. Moriarty was always a memory of Data. Data was
yeah,
the entire security system of the Daystrom Institute.
right. Data and lore and before and soon, like that whole complex.
Even though it wasn't on, and even though at the time like it was evil lore, and he was the entire security system. I originally thought
Yeah,
Moriarty was the security system and he was protecting Data, but no, Moriarty was just a memory of Data's.
yeah, yeah.
I didn't
Like the
get that.
crow.
Yeah, no, I mean I got that there was pieces of I just does that make like does I don't know. Let's not think about it.
I don't know, dude. I don't know.
Anyway, there's a big latch. There's a big latch hole in the
You
front
can
of the bridge
open
that opens right where the view screen is, and people can fly out of it. And that's what happens to
and people
Paddock.
can fly out of it. Yeah. It's a weird thing to have. Like I kind of tried to think from a engineering standpoint, like why they would need the bridge's view screen to like have a way to like evacuate the whole bridge. And I just thought of like any malfunction and how catastrophic that would
Oh,
be.
Mac pointed out the line was data something about a pissed off positronic security system, which is like
Right. Yeah.
kick it. And then Seven says the line too. She says Seven's like get off my bridge.
Oh yeah, yeah, she does say that. I forgot about that one. But you laughed about that one because it also reminds me of "Get off my plane"
Oh
from Air
yeah, and
Force One.
Data says something about monologuing protoplasm, monologuing protoplasm.
He
He was
said
always doing the
we
monologuing.
really should.
That was a good
Oh,
line.
I kind of want to because that it was a great
It
line.
was a great
It
line. I
honestly
just
was
didn't
like,
write it down because I was not carrying it.
can I find it quickly?
Yeah, if you search transcripts, the entire transcripts of the shows are up there
I'm
on the
never gonna. I'm
internet
gonna search
and the internet.
the internet. I was just gonna look in the couple books I have here.
Makes sense. And what was the name of the episode again? Uh,
Surrender, Tim. My goodness. You look for it. I'll talk about cool things while you're
I
looking
found it.
because you'll better.
Um,
What, you are Data, aren't you, Tim? Anyone who
Protoplasm.
ever watched
Okay,
the TNG
Data.
episode where the guy named Tim wants to be Data?
Yep. Unwanted guests and monologuing protoplasms. I am announcing an immediate shift change. Hey, boys. Grunting. Jack Crusher, are you up? That's my cue. What the hell are you doing? Picard, do it now. Bridge, open the evacuation hatch. Now.
I like how you're
Get
doing
off
all
my
the lines.
bridge. And then she goes, oh, fucking solids.
Oh,
Picard, close it
right.
now. That's the sequence that I.
Imagine if in that moment where they were like, Picard, close it now. Picard was just like kind of off in his own world, like, oh, what? And then like, everyone gets sucked off the bridge. Imagine. The other thing that doesn't make any sense is you're opening a hatch
Mhm.
to suck a changeling out into space. A changeling who can literally like turn her arms into like chains and hold on to something, or like a big hook.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's because these changelings have different rules. There was a changeling Loss on Deep Space Nine. He was like a super good changeling at changing, and he could change himself into like a spaceship that could fly through space.
That's amazing. I
That's
mean, it
pretty cool.
happened fast too. Like you could argue that like when the bridge door opened, like maybe, but no, it didn't happen fast because you could see it slowly kind of like happening. I think there was enough time for her to like change into something. Anyway, whatever.
Yeah, and
Eh,
GCB and Mac are speculating about what would happen to a changeling if it froze. It could fall apart in space and then reconstitute itself. I heard someone say somewhere that if we were to go in space, it would take like 8 hours for us to freeze. But if a liquid went in space, it would immediately boil. So if she was a liquid base, like if she should boil, not freeze,
she should
scientifically,
boil.
maybe. But who knows what space is going on in that moment? It's a sequence where she died. It's a good villain death
it's
sequence.
it's a sequence where she died, and she does say "fucking solids," which I kind of was like, that to me was just in
You
line with
chose
like the
your
rest of the
bed. You
a little
chose.
over the top, a little like just kind of like again, like some of these great villain like final lines, and that's like not going to be up there with like the best final lines. But anyway,
Only
and then
it's
they
a
blow
line
up the
only a
bridge.
changeling would say.
True.
And then Shaw sits down. And he's still got the leather jacket on.
Oh, dude, we got to talk about at some point just the outfits. There's these jackets are so cool. I
Yeah, they're
want
pretty
one of
cool.
these.
I do. They're pretty cool.
Their
Oh, and
outfits
there's
are
a really
awesome.
cool. Sorry. Shaw's like, you take it away, Seven. Or no, he says, you take it away. I don't think he doesn't use the word seven. He doesn't call her Seven. But she says, you take it away. And then she's like, fire. And then they shoot a bunch of torpedoes and the ship blows up. And a pretty cool, like the explosion sequence was pretty awesome.
It was a good explosion. I don't think the changelings like Vatic turned into a puddle of goop at one point, but no, they didn't. I don't know if we ever saw them change into anything
Yeah,
like a
Max says, did we see them turn that wasn't organic? No, I don't think so. I think I think we're pretty good at assuming that part of the whole cost of them being really good at pretending to be people is that they are so much like people they can't turn into non-people.
you're probably
I mean,
right.
that wasn't said. It's just there's so much about these changelings that is ambiguous
Yeah.
and confusing, and we're just sort of left like like okay, that probably makes sense, which is okay because I don't think we're dealing much more with changelings. I think this is the end of the changeling conflict. We're moving on to
Well,
whatever's
there's still a
next.
bunch of changelings in Starfleet, but I agree that they're probably not going to deal much with it. Also, GCB wants your cap, Tim. You need to start making those custom. I have one of those. Tim made me one of those caps.
Yeah, you don't wear it
Well, it's at the office
this
still.
season at
So
least.
we were supposed to be going.
Oh, of course,
Yeah,
yeah.
we're supposed to be going back to the office to like do episodes there, and we haven't. But I have a cap very similar. Mine has Picard and um.
It's Boff
Oh,
from the Picard maneuver.
right. Ah, that's way too cool. That's too cool for me. Maybe I don't like deserve to wear it. I think it's almost like.
You gotta wear it selectively.
But yeah, if you want Tim to make you a
Um,
cap, Tim makes these custom caps. They're $8,000. I take most of that profit because I'm Tim's sales associate. Anyway, good
and
explosion.
then the next, I thought it was a great explosion sequence. And then, oh, this is the part where, so Data's like, I'm good. And it's like, it's Data. It's like, I'm good. I'm all good. I'm Data now. And then he tries to do the Data neck thing. And he goes like,
Oh,
you know, Data always did the neck thing.
well, yeah, because
And then he goes, "Ugh," and then it's like, I pulled something.
there's a big crack noise. He like cracks his neck.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, and then
Yeah.
he comes, which I love, by the way. I think it's great. But at the same time, it's like, even though Data isn't simply an android anymore, he's still like, I think, a new body synth thing. So like, still doesn't really explain why his neck cracked. Like he's an old man now.
But he
But
kind of
anyway,
is
I
more of an
love.
old man because all the androids from season one, they were all like they were more human. They had like humans flesh on the outside, and that's how they could. That's how Soji was undercover and didn't even
I like how
know.
you're covering your mouth.
That's what that's a
We should do the
visual.
rest of the episode that way.
And
Right.
so like he is more human, is what I'm saying. He actually like I think like he actually has human skin and stuff, or
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
more or
I
less
loved it. I thought it was
biological
great. I
skin.
just thought it was funny. But like, remember when we were watching it, pointing out the Data used to always, that was like a neck move Data always did.
Mm.
He would just kind of do that movement.
And even
But then in
Timothy,
that moment,
remember Timothy in that episode you were just referencing where
yeah,
he
he
was
was
like
doing that.
he was doing that too.
Yeah. So then he does it and then like crack.
All right, and GCB
Um,
says Jack is probably okay. So we're almost at the end, and we got to do the big because we have to spend some time speculating. So let's
we can
get
go a
there.
little lower than 8K. We can go a little lower than 8K, by the way. Let's negotiate. Send us a message. We'll negotiate on that hat. And you can get anything on it. Like you could get like the crystalline entity and Deanna Troi saying, um, no, that wasn't the crystalline entity. Anyway, you can get anything on it.
Priscilla and Andy
This is
would
a
be
great.
dope. So there's a fantastic scene that they give, and it's a decently long scene too. I'm really happy. I'm just Data and Geordi talking and walking, and the best line I think is right here where Geordi goes, "How are you feeling?" or "How do you feel?" And then
Yeah,
Data's
I
like,
feel.
"I feel,"
It
and
was pretty
he
friggin'
says like, and they
beautiful.
do this thing where he's like, "I thank you. You were always like the true friend," and he's like, "I always like, I can't like repeat it, but it was solid. I like it was again some of the best part of the. I mean, LeVar Burton carrying the show, LeVar Burton, Prince Spiner, the best part
Yeah.
of the show. I just my only sadness around this is like this should have been 5 episodes ago, and then just only this.
Yeah, well, it's crazy how paint me wearing this and only this. I don't know why when you said only this it made me think that. But it's so good. Like I
And
don't
these are
know.
such
It's like
well-developed characters. I think I've always felt like we've dismissed TNG as not being character-driven because it's so episodic, unlike Deep Space Nine and New Trek. But really, I feel
yeah.
like the TNG is more character-driven, more developed than any other Star Trek, any other TV show. Like I know the TNG characters. I've seen as much Deep Space Nine probably as I've seen TNG. I don't know because I started watching TNG when I was younger, but I've seen tons of other Star Trek. But the characters I know the best are the TNG characters. And I know how they think, and I know how they'd act in every situation. And I know the writers have always, it's been like an ongoing thing among Star Trek writers that it was always more difficult to write the TNG cast because they don't just like hang out and talk about stuff. Like it's always hard to write dialogue that wasn't technobabble between the TNG crew,
Mm.
according to the writers. But at the same, I just feel like I know these characters the best. There actually are super developed characters.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, I 100% I agree with that. Like I feel like when I watch TNG, like, and I'm not with you where you know Deep Space Nine basically as well, Voyager. For me, TNG was the Star Trek that I fell in love with, and every character, the progression of how they would interact with each other and grow and change. And I do believe that as an ensemble cast, I would say, obviously, in my opinion, that they are the best cast TV show of all time. In my opinion, I think like how the chemistry that this cast had together is just like something
Mm.
that I haven't seen
And
duplicated.
Mac
And
was
I
pointing
think,
out again in the chat that this scene suddenly it felt a lot more like a TNG episode. Like just it was just a slower scene with dialogue that felt way
yeah, yeah,
more like a
exactly.
TNG episode.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's exactly it. It's characters, something, things would happen on the next generation that were dramatic. Like the ship almost was destroyed many times. Um, but it was always what was going on. Like an episode would start because it was like Worf's birthday, or Data was doing a poem, or they were doing a performance of like a Shakespeare play on the like at 10 forward, or like there was always something else. It wasn't because they were on a ship exploring and on missions, but they were also living there. Like that was their life. They lived on the ship. So
Hmm.
like the thing that bothers me, here's a big one. This season of Picard on this ship, like what have we seen other than just them trying to survive? Like they're just everything's attacking them, shit's blowing up, things are on fire, smoke,
There
sparks.
was that moment between Seven and Sydney. Remember that sort of that one scene? It was sort of a setup for the later scene where they could tell Sydney was a changeling, right? But there was sort of
Yeah,
a
so
moment
but they
there.
were like so I
And there
guess what
was
I
that
mean
one
is
moment
like
between Seven and Jack when they were just nerding out about the ships.
right. No, there was a few scenes where they just
I think
talked, but I
that's it.
guess
I
what I'm
think those are
saying
the
is
two
like
moments.
and again like I understand that this they've gone with a long season arc and they're trying to show this you know really big bad head thing and it's mean and Vadic's mean and lots going on but yeah I just missed that. I missed the
Hmm.
slow pace and
Steve
it's funny
says,
too because he's
oh, sorry.
uh-oh.
I was going to say, Steve says great joy and gratitude. And Gay Carboy says, I cannot unsee the fact that there is no carpet. So there's no carpet. And of course, that was a classic thing on the old sets, that there was carpets everywhere.
Well yeah
That
and the
was the,
bridge just looked like it looked like the inside of like a Cadillac car. Like it was just very like leather seats and like kind of brown leather and I don't know I loved it but anyway. um Oh, and also, if you want a hat with Borg implants, yes, we can do that for 200K Australian. Hey, no problem. I was going to say 100K Australian, but if you want to go 200, I'm all about making deals. Notice how Riker's standing here. You know how he always complained about having a bad back? It definitely looks like he's like in like kind of back, like he doesn't have a lot of back flexibility here. The way that he's like,
no. They're
he's
all
also
sitting
sitting
down in
down.
this
So.
shot. It's sort of the shot I got. But they're doing it. And they even say, like, man, it's been too long since we've done this. And suddenly, it's
So
feeling
this
like
is
classic Trek again.
yeah. Since how many years since all they've all been in a one room
Well, it's
together?
been
This season.
23 years since Nemesis, 26 years since the war, and 20 years since roughly 20 years since Beverly left. But of course, Jack was actually born before Nemesis. But either way,
Right.
they don't seem to have hanged out in 20 years basically.
But can we just do a cheers to the gravity, the gravitas, the epicness of this happening here? Like cheers. If you're watching, cheers to the crew being all together again. I know it happened a few days ago, but that's a big deal. Let's take that in because I've been all through season 1, 2, and 3 of Picard at least hoping to see this again, and we finally got it. It's been a long time coming. I hope
And
it's
they've
not
got
the
to
last
solve
we
some
see them all
problems.
together. They got to solve some problems. Let's get down to business. They should have just played a poker game, honestly.
Yeah, I do feel like, well, they did. Well, the deck of cards was one of the things that Data had as a memory. Nice touch, of course.
So is this the last scene you have of them all together?
Yeah, this is the last one I got. And then I go into the last final sequence.
Is there anything about the scene we want to cover? So basically, like
There's a
Deanna
couple
says, she
jokes.
senses a darkness. Oh,
Beverly references the fact that like she totally cut them off 20 years ago, and it's a little
well, she
awkward.
just says, "But I've always thought of you." Like,
I
ah,
kind
come
of
on.
wish she hadn't referenced that. I'm kind of don't like if they're not going to actually explain it, don't reference it, in my
Well,
opinion.
Picard also says to Data, like, "I hope you're okay with the fact that I, like, basically we brought you back after I let you die the way that you had asked." And Data's like, "Oh yeah, this is a different me now."
But there's I
It's
think
like,
oh sorry.
you think what?
Oh, I was going to say I think Picard in this scene does mention that Frontier Day is hours away, and it sort of
Yeah, yeah.
occurred to me that if Picard didn't keep saying Frontier Day is 48 hours away, 36 hours away, then we wouldn't know that. We have sort of no
Yeah, like,
sense or depth or idea of the Frontier Day coming, other than him just saying it's hours, this many hours away. Like they haven't been able to write a way
because
for us to connect with Frontier Day at all.
no, exactly. So I think in some ways the idea of saying it's this many hours, now it's this many hours, the writers were clearly trying to create more tension, but I don't think it's been successful for the reason you just stated. We don't have any really context of like, yes, we know time's passing, but it seems arbitrary. Like, I feel like the next episode they could literally go back to like it's 60 hours away, and we'd be like, okay, it doesn't really matter. Like we know it's coming up, but like the amount of hours, like it just kind of skips here and there, and also like it doesn't seem very realistic. They've gone through how many battles and how much stuff has happened, and
We
anyway, so
haven't
yeah,
seen we
I
haven't
think
seen anyone prepare for Frontier Day or talk about what they think is going to happen at Frontier Day
yeah,
or
yeah,
talk about their feeling. I mean, Jordy did mention how he thought it was such a stupid idea for all the ships to get together, but that's all. That's the only thing we've heard about Frontier Day.
yeah. The other thing I wanted to note about the scene before you switch is
Mhm.
just Worf makes a comment about there were many times I wanted to send. I've slaughtered many people, and there were many times I wanted to send their heads to you, but I was told that would come across as a bit passive aggressive. And I love Worf, and I love Worf as comic relief can be pretty great, but to me that almost did Worf a disservice because Worf isn't an idiot, and he's been around the TNG crew long enough and been around humans and like done stuff long enough to know that he's not sending heads to people doesn't make any sense. And Worf was never like again he's about honor, and now he's saying he's a pacifist, and yet he was going to send decapitated heads to people. Like what the heck is going on with Worf?
Yeah,
He's
no,
a
it
little
didn't
confused.
track. And I don't know if the writers know this, but Worf was raised by humans. Worf is more familiar with human culture than he is with Klingon culture. That was kind of always
Yeah,
his thing.
and he was always a bit of a pacifist. He was never like a big brute that just wanted to like cut people's heads off.
He seems that way in that, you know, that YouTube edit of him always saying, "Let's fire, let's fire, let's fire, fire the
Sure,
weapon."
yeah,
But no, that's true.
he's
I
still a
mean,
Klingon, but
yeah, but yeah, it didn't.
yeah,
It was kind of funny, but yeah, it didn't really make sense that because he wasn't a clueless, socially clueless guy about human matters. He's maybe since he's been away from humans, like he's been more with Klingons the last decade, then just he's kind of
I don't know. I think it's just again they're kind of just being they're using
they're
Worf as
treating him
comic
like
relief.
he's the one alien character, so he acts like an alien.
Yeah, he's just acting weird and different, and it gets a laugh. And even in that moment, I was kind of like, ah, ha, ha, but then I thought about it and was like, what? He's gonna send them like heads, but then he thought it'd be passive aggressive, and even
How
if
would
that
it
was
be
like
passive
something slight,
aggressive?
yeah, I don't get that either because that's
Because he hasn't been in
either
contact with them for 20 years, so sending them heads would be like too demanding,
it didn't really
too much of
didn't
a
really add
commitment.
up. Yeah, there's different things and I think if they were workshopping like a comic relief moment with Worf, and the other thing is like just give him a moment for God's sakes. Like, can he just like be honorable Worf who was like a badass, but also like was like a deeply interesting and unique character, like not just a guy that was like, I cut off another head and here it is. Worf, get that out of here. Oh, whoops! I thought you would like the head. Like, just
Orphan is
Worf and
decapitated
his
head.
heads. There's a few comments. Do you want to check like before we
Yeah,
move
go
on
for
because
it.
this is the last scene we're coming up to?
Yeah, but I think that's a big
Um,
scene.
ships being linked for Frontier Day.
Yeah, we don't really know what Frontier's doing other than all the ships are coming. I think Instagram has said that we're gonna see the ending, the final
And the
flight of
Enterprise
the
D
latest
as well.
Enterprise F.
Oh, I missed. Where's the F comment?
Yeah, and Mac
Well,
mentions
isn't that
that
what the
LeVar Burton has
answer is?
already mentioned 3 days of filming on the recreation of the Enterprise D bridge. So that's a certain thing. And 3 days of
Oh, okay. I didn't
filming,
even know that.
3 days of filming is, I don't
Well, that can
know,
equal like 3 minutes, and that
it
can
could
be
be a
like a
few
very
minutes, but
short.
historically, and I think the way that they film, if that feels like half an episode though, right?
Hey, listen. If they get next episode, hey, if they get onto the Enterprise D midway through the next episode, and then the end of next episode and the last episode, they're using that ship, would be. I don't even know
I'd
how
be
I'd
down.
react to that.
And then the
Yeah,
lighting is all
do that.
Enterprise D lighting, and well, I have some speculations of what's gonna happen next episode, so I'll get to that.
Oh, it'd be funny if they made a joke where they all got on the bridge and it was super dark, and then like as an audience, we're like, oh no, they made the bridge dark. But then like Picard says like, computer, lights up, please, and like it's
I really hope they do. That would be great.
yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, keep going.
All right. Next scene. So anyway, there's a sequence. There's a couple lines. Uh, Deanna says there's darkness around Jack, but Jack
Oh,
himself
right,
isn't
yeah.
darkness, and she's like, I think it's time I had some
No,
time with
Jack
you.
isn't
So,
darkness. The
yeah.
darkness is around him and through him.
And so she takes his hand, and he's like, let's go. Have you been dreaming about doors? Because she's like, doing her telepathy, empathy things, and we go through the sequence. There's that sort of red, stormy thing, very red.
Mm-hmm.
There's the door, and it's got those tendrily black, red things going through. It's the Titan hallway, but it's a old-fashioned red door. We have a bunch of noise. We watched this because we were watching this together, and we with Steven, and we rewatched this like 3, 4 times, and we were like listening to all the sound clips and everything. So there were sounds that definitely sounded like it was Borg sounds, and the
It
voice
did.
that kept hearing, and then there was a Jack at the end. It sounded like the Borg Queen. Um, and then
It did.
Troy's like, open the door, and he's like, I don't want to. Something horrible is gonna happen if I open the door. I'm terrified too. And he goes to open the door, and then it cuts.
And we don't get to see again another episode that teases finding out what Jack's thing's all about and still doesn't tell us. Um, my two concerns with us still not knowing is when you build something up that much, if the reveal isn't completely epic, then it's always going to make it an even bigger letdown. The more you build it up, the more the letdown will be if it's not like a huge deal. So it just worries me that like it's not going to add up to how much hype they're creating by not revealing it yet through it not being the thing on the other side of that door better be really dang interesting. Tim, did you see the preview where Deanna does see what's on the other side of the door and she goes like, and then Jack says like, "Tell me what you saw." Did you see that
No, I
preview?
haven't seen the. I know that there is always the next episode previews on the Ready Room with Will Wheaton. I don't usually
Yeah,
like those.
so I did see it, and I think Mac made this comment earlier about. I know we had said the voice sounds like the Borg Queen, but in the preview, it sounded a lot like Beverly Crusher.
Interesting, because I've thought all along Bev was evil. Bev was bad. I was saying that.
Well, I'm
Remember?
wondering. Yeah, now I'm wondering more if like one of our really early theories is somehow mixed into all of these theories. I don't know that it's necessarily exactly what we thought, but I am wondering if it has more to do with Beverly than we or I guess we originally thought it might have something to do with Beverly. So now I'm actually wondering, does it have something to do with Beverly? Max said he didn't think it was Borg. I still think it'd be
Well,
weird if it wasn't Borg at all.
I like the clues in this episode were very heavy-handedly Borg. The last episode, there was a couple of things that were very pretty solidly. Remember, I said like basically pretty solidly changeling. This episode was pretty solidly Borg, but remember we were talking about everything is also it could be something else potentially. Like it's still just references and enigmatic things. Like you don't know how much is it a real clue or they're just playing with us. But right
Sure.
now, this episode said it was Borg. Like there's no way around that. Like that's what this episode said. It said it in an annoying,
Well,
like
so
we can
I want to
take
bring
it
up.
back later way, but it said this is a Borg.
Okay, it's just yeah, maybe Jack's perception. So I wanted to bring up too a couple things that Steve had pointed out to me that I didn't notice from episode one. And if we're getting into the
Let's do
speculation
it. We're
period
there.
of okay, okay, put up the animation.
Uh,
I knew we need one. We need
we have the timeline from 2 seasons ago.
yeah, that works.
There's us
Yeah, we
two.
need a thing that comes in. I'll write like a little rock song that's like speculation. Anyway, so here we are. We're speculating now what's going to happen next, and so the Borg thing. There's a lot of evidence. There's a lot of like breadcrumbs for that one, and one of those things being, but this also leads to maybe Beverly being involved. Episode one, the very first thing you see, I mean, there's space, but
Hmm.
then you see a captain's, or you see on a computer, Picard's log from A Best of Both Worlds,
Yeah,
where he's talking about, I don't know what the Borg want with me.
yeah, and they're hiding in the
Um,
nebula. And he's like, "Why do the Borg want me?" So it's like, hmm.
what does God need with a starship? So, and then you hear, sorry, you don't hear, you see that this is in some room playing on a computer, and then like a few seconds later, Beverly's there. It's in Beverly's room
Yeah.
or in a room she was
Well,
in
there was
on a
only
ship
like
she's
one
on.
set that they had for that ship, but
Regardless, that's Beverly's ship. She's on, and it looks like she's been watching this on the computer screen.
yeah.
Why is she watching a log from the captain about the Borg? Um, so that was like one of the first things that Steve had noticed and pointed out. And I was like, oh my goodness,
Mm.
like that was a while back. I went and watched it and thought, that's weird. Like, why would she be watching that? Why would it be about the best of both worlds? Then there's, of course, Shaw's hatred of the Borg and the hatred of Picard being Locutus. Then there's Vadic saying, how fitting that you're here, Seven, on the bridge when she walked on. Then there's like talking about the many thousands of voices.
And Shaw
Um,
specifically references the real Borg that are still out there, which is a really odd line unless it's telling the audience, hey, there's actually still real Borg out there. Because as far as the audience knew, we thought that all the Borg now were Agnes, Jurati, good Borg that were protecting us from the rift.
yeah, and then another thing that you mentioned is that someone had noticed that in the subtitles with the disembodied voice, the whispering voice, that you saw that someone had noticed there was a mistake and it said Borg Queen in the
Mm.
subtitles or something. Um, Now, whether that's like bankable or not as information that like we can for sure know is true, that's still interesting to think about. Um,
But it sounded a
and
lot like
Gay,
the Borg Queen this episode.
yeah, but like if you see the little preview, like it definitely sounds like Beverly. But as Max said, maybe it's just Jack's kind of hearing a voice and he for whatever reason placed his mother's voice in there, or like there's a lot of different reasons why that would be the case. Doesn't necessarily mean. Um, Now, Carboy said something about the nanobots. So we've been talking about that a lot,
Yeah,
and that
so the,
and that the aromatic syndrome is actually maybe a leftover remnant of Locutus
hmm,
when Picard was assimilated, and that's what they needed out of Picard's body, and that Picard having an offspring of Jack, that Jack somehow inherited whatever that remnant of the Borg was, and that is in Jack's body, and then somehow now
that
this
seems to
disembodied
be
head.
what they're leading to, right? That seems to be what they're suggesting. The problem with
Well,
that
there's evidence for it.
The problem with that is that Beverly put Picard back together from Locutus. She would have known if there was still a bunch of stuff there, or made that like I think Beverly would have made that connection at least with Picard at the time, or with her son. Like, how does Beverly not know this? Again, maybe Beverly's not a reliable person in this dynamic. Um, but it could also be that whatever's in his brain was there alternatively before he was Locutus. And that is why the Borg chose Picard to be Locutus. So there was already something weird, something unique, or something special going on in Picard's brain before Locutus. That's why they chose him to be Locutus. And whatever that is, it's a genetic thing that his son also has in his brain. And that's why they want to assimilate uh, or they want to use Jack to assimilate Frontier Day now. See what I'm
Yeah, and I know
saying?
you mentioned that before.
So
I
that's
don't.
like and just
That
another
one.
version of that.
Yeah, for me, that one doesn't track just because the Borg assimilated Picard because he was the main captain of a flagship and he was one of the main characters in the TV show. I don't think. I mean, yes, they might be like retconning that now and saying like, oh, there was like something he had that was special to the Borg, but even that would be weird because like how it's very um, you
Yeah,
know,
I get what you're
nice
saying,
coincidence, a
but to
great
me,
coincidence for the
that sort
Borg.
of
It's a great coincidence for the Borg to basically find the captain of a ship who's also the main character of the show, who just so happens to have a genetic difference that makes him what easier to assimilate. Like, what did it give them as an advantage?
yeah, I don't know what that is. I don't know what it makes it think, but we don't know what it is otherwise either. I just think if it was something left over from him being Locutus, there's that problem of why didn't Beverly notice it? Why did Beverly think he had aromatic syndrome? Why did Beverly not notice it
Right.
in Jack?
So Gay Carboy says, yes, Tim, just because Beverly hasn't said it doesn't mean she doesn't think it. It is why she is so sorried and was going back through Picard's logs.
Yeah, well, that's what I think, and I think there's still something. I still don't trust Beverly, is what I'm saying. But if
Yeah,
it
so
is the
so that could
Borg,
easily explain.
it feels like the entire plan of what's going to go on is that Jack is going to be used to assimilate the Federation. on Frontier Day, right?
Yes. Yes.
And
I
he's
think
some
so.
sort of, I don't know if it still fits, a Manchurian candidate, or it's gonna be something in his
He's
head
like
where
a
he's like
sleeper agent.
a sleeper agent, where then suddenly he goes super Borg and then he assimilates all the shits at once. That's what the Borg
And
need.
honestly, Jack being a bit Borg would make more sense. Remember when he all of a sudden became really good at fighting, and we were like, "What was that all about?"
But Borg have never done that before.
Borg are pretty darn strong.
I was rewatching some Voyager recently, and
They at
there's a
least could be.
scene early on where they sort of established that Seven is strong, and she was able to like overpower some people and try to escape some stuff. But then,
Yeah.
but like 90% of the time, Seven was weaker than everyone else and could be just knocked over.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it may not be consistent, but I think generally speaking, even just logistically,
But
it would
the
make
Borg
sense
have
that
always
Borg are
been
stronger.
strong in like a "I'm coming, you can't stop me" way, not in a
That
kung
also.
fu fighting way.
Yes, but okay, but can we not think that maybe if he has nanites in him or something that can like it's almost like a thing where it can download fighting ability. Like there's no reason why if this is like an evolved form of the Borg, maybe it does have a bit of changeling DNA in there too. I don't know, but there's like no reason to
I
believe
mean, it's
that
possible. It's just
there's
nothing he's
no
done in that respect has been like, oh, his telepathy, his fighting ability tracks with what we've seen any Borg or any Borg-like stuff before. None of it. It's not
I
really
think it
Borg
could
stuff.
be
It
easily
could be.
easily added. But none of the changelings have tracked with what the changelings were like
Yeah, that's
before
true,
either.
true.
So
And that's why I was like, there's no way these goons are changelings. I was like, no way, because they don't track at all with
right,
that.
because I remember when I suggested
Yeah,
that like way back and you
yeah,
said that to me,
exactly.
you were
I
like,
was like,
there's no
no way.
way.
These are guys
And it
aren't
was like I
changelings.
think
That's not what changelings
the
are.
next episode,
Yeah, and next
the
episode,
next episode it
or
was they were changelings.
Not even next episode, Metalis did a tweet saying they were changelings. And then like 3 episodes
Right.
later, they're like, oh yeah, they're probably changelings. Whatever. Anyway, yeah, so that's a good point. Is that
Yeah.
what I
Oh,
think
hey,
tracks
what
doesn't
about
mean,
this? What about
right?
this? Hey, I know, sorry I'm interrupting, but what about this? What if Beverly isn't evil? And maybe this is what Gay Carboys is saying, but maybe Beverly's actually trying to protect Jack because she knows this and she doesn't want people to basically just like destroy him. So she's been trying to almost like stop it from happening. And so she's almost like just maybe that's why she didn't want to see Picard for 20 years because she's like trying to protect Jack or keep him hidden because she knows something we don't know about Jack that and she's actually purposely not telling it and not saying it because she's protecting Jack. Is that possible? Yes, I
Yeah,
think
I
it
think that's
is.
100% possible. Max says, I feel like this is all a misdirection. It'll be something completely different. I mean, I don't
You
know.
know what?
It's just
That's
like,
obviously possible,
I mean,
but I keep
yeah,
thinking
but then what's the
out of
point of
all
all
of
this?
the well,
Um,
sure, and out of all the Star Trek villains or like baddies or what could it be other like it's not going to be changelings anymore, I don't think. And even though changelings weren't a big part of TNG, they were like a Deep Space Nine thing. But like, what could it be? Who
Borg
could
has
be the
always
bad?
been the main villains of Picard. We did have Borg.
And I
I
do
didn't think
get,
Borg was coming back because they were such a big story in season one, and then again in a completely
yeah,
different way in season two, and then we'd have to be completely
right.
retconned and completely different.
But
Mm,
we also know that they're already throwing shade at season one and two in this
true.
season. They, just like us, I think, are kind of trying to like say, okay, we get it. Those weren't the best seasons. Like, we're going to try to do it right this time. We're going to do it with the Borg. It's going to be, they're going to be a cool villain instead of like, but again, I realize that that's really not the best case scenario. And that's not really a good way that they,
But
for them to create
at
this.
the end of
But
the day, I agree. I think we have to say it's Borg right now. Pretty heavily handed hints that it's Borg.
I'm leaning that way. But if it isn't Borg, I'd like to hear other theories.
I haven't
And
heard the
we're going to
same
know soon
theory
anyway.
otherwise. I do have some speculation of what is going to actually happen next episode. So I think
All righty, let's hear
we
it.
still have to have the climax at Frontier Day. We still have to get to Frontier Day. The problem logistically is whatever happens when they open that door, it's going to be scary, and they're not going to be like, "Hey, now let's take Jack to Frontier Day." They're not going to do that. So whatever happens, Jack, I don't think we're going to see everything behind the door. I think it's going to be a little ambiguous. I think Jack's going to freak out and then split up somehow, so that the crew is separated. Jack leaves somehow. He takes the shuttle.
Hmm.
He zoops out. He's like, I don't want to do it. And then they're like, or he gets partially assimilated or controlled or something. Whatever the real bad guy is, he's under that influence. And then he's taken away. And then they're like, oh, now we have to go to Frontier Day to stop or save Jack. Right?
Yeah.
They have to split up so that Jack can go to Frontier Day on his own for them to there. So I think that's what's mostly going to happen next episode.
So Jack is going to be separated.
Mhm.
Do you think this will then spur? So what will happen first? Deanna will reveal what's behind the door. We'll find out what it is, right? I don't
We
think they're going
have
to
to.
hide that.
They can't keep hiding it.
It'd be really weird. Although I do know from the preview that Deanna kind of freaks out and leaves the room, and he's like, "What did you see?" So I know they're at
Yeah,
least
they're
going to
gonna
try to hide.
they're gonna just what's the word, bleed it out, like make it take even longer.
They're going to bleed it out still. Yeah, they're going to wait a little longer. Like I feel like she's going to leave the room. She's going to go and say like, "I got to talk to Picard." She's going to say, "This is what's going on." Whether they say directly, she might even speculate and say, "I saw this, but I don't know if this is what it means." I hope she doesn't see more symbolism, and then she like makes her own. Maybe she sees like, oh, it'd be annoying if she sees like the Federation burning or something, and then it's like a stupid prediction image or vision.
We got a lot of that in
That would be
season
really
one, and it was very bad.
yeah. So I really hope that's not the case. But I do agree that at some point Jack will be separated. Beverly will have to reveal either through Deanna saying what she saw or through Beverly revealing that she maybe knows more, that this is what's been going on with Jack, that she was trying to protect him, or we'll just find out some way through Deanna. But Jack will probably be separated. I agree. Maybe he'll be called to this disembodied head, wherever this disembodied head actually is. Or we speculated too if it's a little bit like a Sauron thing,
Right.
where like the disembodied head is actually the Borg collective that still exists within some kind of network that doesn't have an actual physical body,
Mm.
but can just connect to people through like the cloud.
So we've never
But
really
maybe he's looking
had
for a body.
we've
Maybe he's
never
looking for a body.
yeah, he's looking for a body. We've never really had the origin story of the Borg, the ultimate origin story of where they came from. So they might be retconning the origin or establishing a new origin of the Borg, where the Borg Queen is more like Sauron, trying to like manifest herself. Because she's outside of time, she's
Yeah.
outside of space, she's outside of dimensions. We've dealt with that type of stuff with the Borg Queen before. So she's trying to manifest herself, and the way she can do that is to get the power through Jack somehow. So Jack is kind of like he's got the ring. And so a lot of the
And
imagery has been like that.
what if Jack becomes basically patient zero for the assimilation? So basically, she or he or it, the Borg hive thing that's trying to reach Jack. Still not sure why we're hearing Beverly's voices, but something's trying to reach Jack. That then he will be the weapon, the thing that's supposed to go into Frontier Day and like start assimilating all of the Federation and rebuilding the Borg Empire.
Hmm.
Now, if it's not that, and it's just more something with, like, I don't know. I'd like to at least come up with a plan B. What's the
It's
plan
Armis.
B?
I always liked Armis.
It's we talked about a bunch of things like it's Armis, it's Mott the barber, we talked about Moriarty. We talked about even Yara's evil sister.
Oh,
What
what's
was
her
her
name?
name?
Ishra, something like that. Ishra Yara.
Yeah, or what was the one Steven said? Oh, it was for whatever reason he said Kess, that when
Oh
Kess
yeah,
became
evil
evil,
Kess.
and
They did kind of like
yeah,
evil Kess in that episode. They kind of wrapped it off and said that she was going to live
or
nicely with the Uncompa at the end.
or the crystalline entity somehow like wants to take human form now. It's like somehow, or then finally, um, I don't know, the brain bugs that were in that were going to be the bad guys in
The
this
Bluegills.
episode. Somehow that's is that what
It
is
is
that what
it's the
they?
Bluegills and the Changelings.
Oh no, it's the alien. What was the alien called? The ugly bags of mostly water alien.
Oh, that was just like I just watched that episode yesterday. They didn't really have. They're just like a crystalline silicate alien that was on that planet.
Mac, do you notice that we're just kind of like grasping at straws here, buddy?
Yeah,
Mac
nothing.
said, I reckon
We're
we're all
all
completely
completely
wrong."
wrong. I would be.
Yeah, and I feel like
Yeah, I don't know. Again, it's like I don't know how they can make it a satisfying ending. 'Cause I don't think the Borg is going to be super satisfying now,
uh,
right?
to me, it almost
Could
will
be.
be. I almost want it to be the Borg now, but it's zombie Cass. Yeah, it definitely is zombie Cass.
Yeah, she has to be a zombie.
Um, when that was proposed, and I know you had an issue with like seasons 1 and 2 and dealing with the Borg, but for me, because I kind of want them to pave over seasons 1 and 2 with season 3, so I'm kind of like I'm okay with that, and I do
Yeah,
believe
no, I'm okay with it
I
now.
really do believe that in Picard's whole lifetime, like one of the most impactful, because the episode where he goes to see his brother and he gets really upset about like how terrible it was to be assimilated and to be like that was like such a powerful thing, and like that's haunted him for his whole life because Picard was such a stoic, like,
In
by the
control.
book, like in control, strong person, and it broke him, I think, to be that character, to be Locutus. It was just
Mm.
really well done, really, a
Mm.
great
I
story.
kind of like the idea of Locutus coming back with the other body. I
Yeah,
was
I
a
did
little
too.
surprised they blew his body
Well,
up.
do we know that they didn't like something didn't beam the body off before the ship blew up?
I mean, that's always possible, but they were pretty. They said something like, "We can leave now. It doesn't matter. The body's just a shell." Like they did say lines saying, "We're leaving the body here,"
Yeah,
and then it blew up.
it
Like
cloaked
it was pretty conclusive that it was blown
the
up. There's always like a we, they can always change it in the future,
the
but it
body
was
the,
pretty
the
conclusive
body
in this
stole the
episode.
cloaking device and cloaked and floated. The body can do what it wants, but the mind is weak. The body is. Oh, that's yeah. That's
Yeah,
true.
but
I think it'll be something completely different, but plausible as far as Star Trek ever is. Yeah. I kind of hope, in some ways, I kind of hope you're right. Like, I think it would be fun if it was still a
yeah,
surprise.
I'd love to be surprised
Yeah,
because to be honest, every single reveal we've had so many reveals that have kind of been the lowest bar reveals so far this season. Like there hasn't been any reveals that I know. I guess I was surprised to see Ro,
that's true.
and that was sort of a reveal. But for the most part, like the reveals that they set up, like what Shaw's backstory was, I already speculated it was probably about 359. I kind of
Vadek's
didn't want
backstory.
to. We already figured out Vadek's backstory, and like, we thought she had the virus. She didn't have the virus. She was tortured separately, but it was the same thing as what we thought, and it was just a more confusing version of it, really.
Well,
Like
that's my
a lot of
concern.
the things,
My concern at
it's
this
just going to be
point.
a more confusing just going to be a more confusing version of what we think it is. It's going to be
Yeah.
the Borg, but a much more confusing hand wavy thing around the Borg.
Well, and I think
That's what that would be.
what's
Mm.
been the routine or what's continued to kind of happen to us when we make these speculations and we come up with these ideas that we get excited about. We're like, oh, maybe it's this. Yeah, maybe this happened. 9 times out of 10, if not, I don't know if we went back and looked, maybe 10 times out of 10, it hasn't been the ideas we thought of, and it's been something much simpler, much more obvious, but in a way that's like really disappointing. So I really hope that this isn't just not the Borg, but not the Borg in a way that's disappointing because it's like, oh, it's I don't know. I was gonna throw something out. I have no friggin' clue. What else? I wish I did. I want to know. I'm frustrated. Tell us.
Oh, Gay Carboy says maybe it's like Lost, where they're all just dead. But were they all dead in Lost? I thought that
uh,
was the thing that they
they were kind of
weren't.
all
I don't know.
dead.
I watched it. I didn't understand. I don't know.
Yeah, there was like a
But
mix.
yeah, that's a good point. Is that the big reveal driven shows like Lost, the end of Battlestar Galactica, the end of Game of Thrones,
Yeah,
it's
they're
really
usually
hard to
disappointing.
pull those off. It's really hard to pull off
It's
a good
really hard to pull those off.
big
Is
reveal
there an
twist
example of
ending.
one that was pulled off really well?
What's a big reveal show where the ending worked? It was a surprise ending. That was like
Let
that's
us know in the comments because otherwise we're just going to think about this for the next like 20 minutes.
I mean maybe the Twin Peaks season 4
I don't
revival.
know it, unfortunately.
I can't explain it though. Twin Peaks is bonkers.
Don't try.
Um, no, I mean good things don't have weird reveals, do they? Well, like I don't know, surprising things always happened at the end of like I know Succession's the other show going on right now, and it's a pretty good show, and it always has
Yeah, I just
surprises.
watched that today, actually.
And I like that show.
Well, anyway, let's keep our eyes to the sky
You
and
know, there
straight
was a
on till
show
morning.
recently, just I'll just say quickly, but called The Bear, and there was sort of this twist reveal at the end that sort of fixed some things, but they sort of hinted at it in ways you didn't realize they were hinting at this reveal at the end, but you sort of got it because there was these weird lines that they repeated or said in a certain way about like I don't want to ruin it for anyone, but they said lines that you were like, that was a weird thing for him to say, or that was a weird reference to make, and then it fit a surprise twist at the end, and it actually worked the first season of The Bear, the
Okay.
restaurant
Sorry, I
show.
wasn't paying attention. I was reading comments, and I mean, I heard a bit of your bear thing, and thank you, Tim. Steve Steve said as long as the afterlife is the Enterprise D, so it's like they go onto the ship and then someone's just like, we've all been dead since, I don't know,
Since
whatever.
season one, haven't you noticed
Yes,
nothing's made sense?
yeah, in season one, before Picard died, the alien race, the synths or race, whatever, won. It actually killed everyone, and since then they've all been dead, and then they're going to end up on the Enterprise D, and Wesley will be the captain. Are you reading now? You're reading the comments, so I have to like.
Max just says Veronica Mars is an example of a really well done
Oh,
serialized
okay.
storytelling reveal. I haven't seen that, but
No, I haven't either. There was a few man, what have I seen recently? Some HBO stuff's been really good. Um,
the first season of
but I
Stranger
don't think.
Things had like
What about, because even
that's kind
a
of
good example of it not working out is a show like what's the one where they're all in a world of robots? It's like a robot world where humans get to just
oh
like
Westworld. I feel
Westworld.
like first season of Westworld had the first season of Westworld. I don't know. I
Was
mean,
really
that's a
good,
long discussion, but there was a
then it
lot
got
of
weird.
like surprise twists. I'm not just talking about the first season. It had a lot of huge surprise twists at the end.
Yeah, and it was well
There was a
done.
couple of really big ones, and
But then
I
after
think that
that,
was well done. Like it brought you along for the ride, and you were like, oh, I thought that, but whoa, I didn't think that exactly,
right.
and you're like, oh, I
But
got
then
that.
those they
Yeah.
all,
That,
if they
that,
keep going, they inevitably kind of fall apart because
oh
it's
man, yeah,
like,
I couldn't even finish the last season of Westworld. It's just
yeah. Well, we should,
I literally
now we're
didn't
talking
even
about all these
watch
other
any of
shows.
it.
We should just like do review shows of
Yeah.
like other
No, but
stuff instead of,
it's an
this is the
interesting
Picard
sort of
thing we're saying.
comparison. Is that this type of it's difficult to do this type of writing.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, everyone was dead. Those are always the best. The best is like the show where like everyone was just dead. I think this is you get stuck in this kind of writing loop of like, if you want to come up with something weird, something really unique, then there's only, I think it's like 5 different things that it can be. It can be aliens, ghosts, government conspiracy, simulation, or like other dimension. I think that's like the only 5. Like, so if you're coming up with a scenario for a story where you're like, something really bizarre is happening, you have, like, you can't go outside of that box of narrative. Like, what else can you have happening other than like they were dead, it was a ghost, supernatural, it's a government, some kind of government like control or mind control, the person was crazy. It's going to end up in one of those, or it's the Borg.
Feels like it's the Borg.
Eh.
But I don't know, because if it's not the Borg, I'm going to be irate.
What if it's something not the Borg but really good and you're happy about it? Which I don't think that's possible at this point. But what
Yeah,
if?
the thing is, like, if they could legitimately surprise me and satisfy me, I would be like, wow, great job. And I'll do it. I'll say, wow, great job. I want them to do well. I'm not going to, like, say, like, I'm not going to pretend like it wasn't genius if it's genius. I'll say that right now. They can pull it off.
Yeah,
I'll say they pulled it off and it was good.
I'll be happy. I'll be happy no matter what, because that's just my personality type. I'm an optimist.
Hey, I'm happy if it's just LeVar Burton and Brent Spiner.
Even when it's raining, I just say it's sunny but a little wet.
It's like a rain half.
This was me symbolizing the rain, I think. Carboys, the Borg. The good place was good that they were all dead. Okay. Yeah, why bother with the change? I mean, there's so much we could. You know what? Catch us next week, because this is going to be a very different conversation, because I think we're going to be talking about how did we feel about the fact that it was ghosts.
Fair, fair.
So let's do that. I think we've talked for sufficient amount of time.
We're just hitting 2 hours.
I filled this thing with tea, and I drank it all like up until this, and it's really cold now and like drying my throat out quite a bit.
Yeah, and just my final thought,
But
Jay
finish
Carboys
off,
and Steve were talking about like if it was Borg or something else all along, why bother with the changelings? Why was there even the changeling reveal?
Didn't even change and do very well and died pretty easily. But the
Yeah, I was
main
just saying
one
that
was
like the Vatic crew didn't even seem like changelings. The changelings, you know, it was significant that they were taking over Starfleet, but that's more like a plot point for why they have to be separated from Starfleet than anything to do with actual is anyone a changeling dynamics.
right. Yeah, it seemed like a waste.
Anyway, yeah, but it's time to end.
Are you gonna cheers me because I just drank the last little bit?
Oh, good.
Anyway,
I'll finish it.
thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, share, smile, enjoy your day, evening, afternoon. Thanks for watching. I think I said that already. We'll see you next time, and I hope we kept you
Engage.
engaged.
Episode 9 next. We'll be there. Already in the outro.